warning for a large stretch of southern England and South Wales through Friday evening, so expect some travel disruption as it's been raining for a couple of days now across these areas. Continuing to see that different story into this evening across Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. Plenty of fine weather, and it's probably going to be quite a mild night actually across the parts of the northwest. Across the far north of Scotland though and the east, we'll see some ha starting to move in overnight with that easterly wind, and that will likely bring a fairly murky start to eastern areas of the north through Saturday morning. Further south, this band of rain will become a much weaker feature, so some respite to the heavy rain, but it's quite a lot of cloud around still, so wherever you are, a fairly mild start to Saturday. So slightly drier start to the day, but further outbreaks of rain are to come on Saturday. I think Saturday will be the drier day more widely of the weekend, but we'll likely see some heavy showers breaking out across central areas of England, parts of Wales throughout the afternoon, and potentially across the south coast towards the end of the day on Saturday. So there could be some further travel disruption. Temperatures around average for the time of year. Still another very warm feeling day in the far northwest.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In East Yorkshire, the A165 is blocked south of Bridlington after an accident between Fraysthorpe and Barmston. Buses replaced trains between Shipley and Skipton because of overhead line problems. The M6 in Lancashire is partly blocked northbound by an accident between junctions 30 and 31 from the M61 to Samlesbury, causing queues. Buses replaced trains between Carmarthen and Milford Haven because of a signalling problem. In London, the A41 is closed each way between Stanmore and the M1 because of a burst water main causing delays. And the A10 is closed at Stamford Hill after an accident with long delays there. The M4 in Newport, there's a lane closed westbound. Someone's broken down between junctions 25 and 25A from Caerleon to Newport, causing queues. Train services are suspended between Hurst Green and Uckfield because of a signalling problem, and train services are suspended between Romsey and Eastleigh via Chandler's Ford because of a signalling problem. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
An army veteran has become the world's most tattooed woman after a 10-year journey to ink 99.98% of her body. I mean, that's really nearly everywhere. But I wonder, I mean, yes, she is unusual, and you'd know her if you met her, frankly, wouldn't you? But are tattoos acceptable they're becoming more and more acceptable just amongst all of us, aren't they? But what about in the workplace?
99.98% of her body tattooed. Do you think this would affect the way that she is received at work?
I do affect it would how she is seen at work, just purely because tattoos are still so stigmatised in the workplace. In today's rapidly evolving society, the traditional standards of what is socially acceptable are being redefined. Facial tattoos, full body tattoos, once stigmatised, are increasingly seen as a form of personal expression, and there shouldn't be a barrier to one's professional or social life.
If you are going for a job, for instance, we make up 90% of our minds about somebody within the first 3 seconds. And I have written a book on body language, and the face is just so important. You need to have the smile, you need to be able to read the facial expression, even when we're speaking. Now, if the face is really heavily tattooed, you can't do that.
Jade said that there is still this stigma, particularly to facial tattoos. We do judge people with tattoos, don't we?
We do. Unfortunately, we do, because it's not the norm. And as a human being, we tend to judge what is not the norm. And as Jade says, we are getting much more used to it. It is much more socially acceptable. But a lot of firms will say, if you've got a tattoo, you cover it. We don't want tattoos in the workplace.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good morning, it's 9:30 on GB News. It's the 6th of September. We're live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Charlie Peters and me, Nana Acquia.
Small Boat Summit. The Home Secretary will chair a meeting with ministers and law enforcement today to discuss plans to tackle smuggling gangs.
Scampton scrapped. Labour ditches plans to house asylum seekers in RAF Scampton.
Rwanda scheme rehomed. Berlin is considering deporting migrants to British-funded facilities in Rwanda.
Prisons for hire. British prisoners could serve their sentences in Estonian jails under a plan being considered by ministers.
And Britain's best brew. Which budget tea bag has been declared superior to the big name brands? We will reveal that later on.
Are you a tea or a coffee person?
Oh, coffee in the mornings, tea in the afternoons, a little Earl Grey after lunch, always fine.
Can't do
Digestive
coffee.
joy, it'll do the business.
Can't do coffee. As a terrible incident that happened at school. I'll tell you about that later.
You're too full of energy for coffee,
Is
I think. Who
I
needs
can't
it?
do it.
You don't need that. You don't
Who
need
do you
that.
think is Britain's best tea brand?
For me, it's got to be a Twinings Earl Grey.
Really?
There we go. Free PR for them on Britain's Newsroom this morning.
Very good. Well, I'll drink it as long as it hasn't got caffeine.
Yeah, well, you've heard our views on coffee and tea, but we'd love to hear what you think. So send your views, post your comments by visiting gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's our news with Sam Francis.
Charlie, Nana, thank you very much indeed. Good morning to you. It's just coming up to 32 minutes past 9. The top story this morning, the Home Secretary is set to lead a summit to address the escalating crisis of people smuggling across the English Channel. That meeting comes in response to a tragic incident this week where 12 lives were lost when a boat capsized in the deadliest crossing so far this year. Yvette Cooper will be joined by key cabinet ministers, intelligence officials and law enforcement agencies to target criminal smuggling networks. She says there is a moral imperative to act and wants to see tighter collaboration with European partners. With over 21,000 arrivals so far this year, the summit will also focus on enhancing the new Border Security Command. Germany is considering using British-funded facilities in Rwanda to deport migrants entering the EU illegally. It comes as Berlin faces mounting pressure to curb illegal migration following last month's ISIS-linked stabbing at a festival. Germany's Special Representative for Migration Agreements thinks that the EU should repurpose the asylum facilities that Britain set up, which were recently scrapped by Sir Keir Starmer's government. The UK is sending 650 missiles to Ukraine in a £160 million boost to its defence against Russia. John Healey, making his first appearance as Defence Secretary overseas, will make the announcement at a summit in Germany later. The missiles are part of a larger £3 billion aid package from the UK to Ukraine and will be delivered by the end of this year. Scotland is setting new boundaries to give women unobstructed access to abortion services. From the 24th of September, the Abortion Services Act will make it a criminal offence to interfere with or harass anyone accessing or providing abortion services within 200 metres of designated facilities. That law aims to safeguard women and staff from intimidation and distress around hospitals or clinics. In the US, officials have arrested the father of a 14-year-old accused of a deadly school shooting. In the rare move, Colin Gray faces multiple charges, including involuntary manslaughter, for allegedly allowing his son to access the weapon that was used in that attack that sadly killed 4 and wounded 9 others. Investigators have revealed that both the 54-year-old and his son had previously been questioned in 2023 over online threats about carrying out a school shooting. The teenager, Colt Gray, 14 years old, used a semi-automatic rifle in the incident and will be tried as an adult. And, of course, it wouldn't be a news bulletin without some weather for you. Southern England and South Wales are in for a wet end to the week as heavy rain brings the risk of travel disruption and some possible flooding. The Met Office has issued a yellow weather warning in place until midnight tonight, following downpours that have already affected some parts of Devon. Commuters are also being warned to prepare for challenging driving conditions and possible road closures. But temperatures could reach 27 degrees Celsius in parts of Scotland, potentially marking it the warmest day of the year so far. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good morning, 35 minutes after 9 o'clock. Hello and welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Charlie Peters and me, Nana Acquare.
Well, first up, Home Secretary Yvette Cooper is chairing a summit today to discuss how to tackle criminal gangs involved in smuggling people across the English Channel in small boats.
Now, Labour has abandoned the Rwanda migration plan in favour of smashing the gangs, but the Prime Minister could live to regret that decision as it emerges that Germany is considering deporting migrants to British funding facilities in Rwanda.
Well, the GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley joins us from the National Crime Agency, where the summit will take place. Olivia, what are we expecting to hear from the Home Secretary later today?
Well, it's a very impressive cast of people who the Home Secretary has gathered today for this meeting. There are various ministers there, the Foreign Secretary, the Justice Secretary. Then you've got people from the Crown Prosecution Service, from Border Security, from the National Crime Agency itself. But in terms of what we're actually expecting to hear, well, to be honest, it's all sounding a little bit woolly. It's not really about new policy announcements. It's about, as Yvette Cooper has said, sort of putting the wind behind the sails of Labour's plan to stop the gangs. It's essentially just talking about the moral imperative to make sure that this happens. Well, talking's all very well, but the figures sort of speak for themselves. There have been 22,000 small boat crossings this year, including 8,000 since Labour took office in July. And what makes this more difficult for the Labour government is that, as you mentioned in the headlines there, Germany is thinking of adopting some of the facilities that were paid for by the British taxpayer for the Rwanda scheme in order to temporarily house migrants who have arrived illegally in Germany. Now, it's slightly different. I don't think we can say straight up that the German government is essentially planning to adopt the entire Rwanda scheme. The Rwanda scheme involved deporting migrants who arrived here illegally to Rwanda forever. There wouldn't be an option for them to come back to the UK if their claims were assessed as valid, whereas the German plan would be about processing those migrant claims in a third country and then accepting asylum seekers into Rwanda. But you know, that's a little bit semantic, because the point is there could be a situation in just a few months' time where migrants who arrive illegally in Germany are sent over to Rwanda and temporarily housed in places that were paid for by the British taxpayer. Now, that is very awkward indeed for Keir Starmer. He was resolute on day one that he would scrap the Rwanda plan, throw it all completely out of the window and replace it with this strategy for smashing the gangs. Smashing the gangs is obviously much easier said than done, and it could be that the Prime Minister ends up coming under a lot of criticism for choosing to throw out the Rwanda policy, which, although far from perfect, we should mention that in the 2 years between when it was mooted and when the general election was called, not a single migrant was actually sent to Rwanda. It was at least a plan for a deterrent strategy, and that's something which so far the Labour government doesn't really seem to have.
This is interesting that it's a national crime agency kind of summit where they're all getting together, but this is an international problem. Has Keir Starmer got any, will there be any members from other countries talking with Keir Starmer in this, or any other collaborations that they're talking about, or is it just simply just the British government chatting about their border command control and all the other potential things that they're thinking about setting up?
Well, the Prime Minister has been talking to the Albanian authorities, and it sounds as though some deal might be agreed with Albania. That was something which the previous Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, also did, and it did actually have a big effect on the number of Albanian small boat migrants coming over here. In 2023, the number of Albanians reduced by 70%. The problem is that there is essentially an endless flow of migrants, illegal migrants, who want to come to Britain. So you cut off the Albanian migrants coming over here, and what we ended up with last year was an enormous number of Vietnamese migrants coming over here. And that just shows what an endless and big problem this is for the Prime Minister. He talks about smashing the gangs, but that's just much easier said than done. You can't sort of take out the top boss of a big gang like you might see on a crime drama in the evening, and that's the problem solved. These are small, nimble gangs with 3 or 4 people moving up and down the channel, moving up and down the beaches all of the time, setting up, closing down again. It's not easy to take out these gangs. Perhaps we'll hear more when Yvette Cooper finishes this meeting today, but I wouldn't bank on it.
Olivia Utley, thank you very much. Well, that summit comes after the Home Office announced the government is scrapping plans to use RAF Scampton as housing for asylum seekers, and that's after £60 million was put into fixing up the site.
Well, joining us from RAF Scampton this morning is the GB News East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis. Good morning, Will. What's been the local reaction to this update from Angela Eagle and the Labour government on closing down this site? I mean, you've been involved in this story right from the start.
Good morning. Yes, from the start, there has been opposition from not just local people who live on the wire of the former RAF base Scampton, but also from the local district council, West Lindsey, which had an expectation that £300 million worth of regeneration would be spent on the site, turning it into what they describe as a world-class heritage centre. And that was all put in jeopardy when the announcement came from the former Conservative government that the expectation instead would be 2,000 asylum seekers moving into the former Dam Busters airbase. So as you can imagine, it's been elation and celebration from the local people that have spent 18 months campaigning as well as protesting here outside of the gates, particularly this stretch along the A15. There was makeshift huts, different communities, sometimes communities that were at odds with each other, and tensions often boiled over. But what we know now from the new Labour government, not so new now, the 2-month-old Labour government, is that they will be scrapping the plan to house asylum seekers here, which is what they always said in campaigning to become the elected government. And as I say, that means that a lot of people here, particularly at West Lindsey District Council, are quite happy, including the Director of Planning and Regeneration, Sally Grindrod-Smith.
Well, we've heard.
This is what we've been working really hard for 18 months, is to secure the future of the site. And today we've learnt that the site will no longer be part of the asylum programme and it will be disposed of, and therefore we can use our regeneration plans and proposals to move forward.
This is the front gates of the former RAF Scampton Air Base. If you were to go about 10 minutes walk inside, you would find rows and rows of modular housing facilities that had been built for 2,000 asylum seekers. That was downgraded to approximately 800 asylum seekers, and now it will be no asylum seekers moving into Scampton. Not a single one has stepped foot inside of those gates. The Labour government says despite £60 million being spent on the former RAF airbase, it is not value for money for the taxpayer, and between now and 2027, the £121 million that would have been spent can be better spent elsewhere.
Will Hollis, thank you very much. Interesting stuff. So they're scrapping it, but they've not. I'm not here where they're going to send asylum seekers. What I did hear is they're going to be dispersed into the community,
yeah.
which is all very well, but you don't know who these people are. You haven't done the necessary checks and balances, so you don't know who's coming across. And we have got a lot of spates of crime.
Yeah, and we have a good story later on in this programme about what can happen when those checks go wrong and when there's so much system failure in processing those claims. Well, the government have said that they have deported some 400 people since they came into power. On one flight, the largest ever deportation flight. So they would say they're making some moves, but at the same time, you've got hundreds arriving every single day.
965, I think it was yesterday. What are they going to do about that? But they're saying they're going to process it quickly. But with the Scampton situation, I'm concerned that people are being joyous too quickly, because I suspect they might build a prison there.
You think so?
I think that's what I think they'll build a prison there. But then at least the people are housed and enclosed.
Sure.
So they can't sort of roam around.
Well, maybe Will Hollis will have another local campaign to report on if that does go ahead.
Well, stay with us, because up next, reports reveal the gunman who fired shots outside the Israeli consulate was a known Islamist. More of that after the break. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Did you know several Paralympic GB track and field athletes are aiming to go for gold this summer in Paris? So aside from pure talent, a British firm has incorporated, get this, space technology in the materials of running clothes to help athletes perform at their ultimate capacity. I'm not sure if I believe this, but we'll find out in a sec. Trailblazing scientists, engineers and designers at British firm Rheon Labs have taken an idea first used in a NASA project, and they've now developed it for over 15 years at Imperial College in London.
First of all, please can you explain to us a bit more about how and what this incredible technology is?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, our founder, Dr. Dan Plant, spent many years developing these kind of dynamic materials. That means they behave in what's called non-Newtonic way. So they don't follow the rules. Effectively, they can change their behavior depending on kind of stress or stretch you apply to it. So what you get on an athlete level, if you imagine you have a garment, it's supercharged. It's such that the garment changes its support depending on your movement or reactivity or the speed at which you run.
So you're saying that it generates, what, more sort of kinetic energy, is that right?
Not quite. It makes you effectively make more out of your own energy. Spot the athletes with the wavy curves and stripes, you'll see that. So that's super polymer we have in combination with these stripes that are kind of built around the way your muscles moves.
You said the difference between first and fourth place is a fraction of a percent.
Yeah, that's the very main difference it makes. So even if you manage to kind of make more of your own energy and improve your performance by 1%, that's the difference between podium and non-podium.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, it's 9:47. This is Britain's newsroom on GB News. And a gunman shot dead by police in central Munich has been identified as an 18-year-old Austrian national believed to have been living in Austria, according to police.
Authorities are still investigating the suspect's motive, but German media is reporting that he was a known Islamist, and that's according to the Bild newspaper. Islamist propaganda was found on the man's phone, but the case was dropped by the Austrian Public Prosecutor's Office.
Well, joining us now down the line is the assistant online editor for The Spectator, Lisa Hasseldein. And Lisa, we have seen a lot of coverage of recent Islamist threats in Germany. Do you think that they're getting a grip of the problem at the moment?
Yeah, that's right. There have been several, particularly in the last sort of 3 to 4 months. I think it's something that has been overwhelming the German authorities a little bit because they clearly aren't on the front foot with dealing with these. I mean, I'm sure as with, I'm sure there'll be plenty that they're thwarting these attacks, but there are quite a few that have been getting through, and they all do seem to be perpetrators who have been radicalised and want to, sort of send a message, I suppose. In fact, the one that took place in Solingen in August in Germany, that was claimed by ISIS. So, yeah, it's definitely a problem, and I don't necessarily think that the German authorities quite have a grip on it yet.
And you've also been reporting a lot on the rise of the AfD, particularly in the east of Germany. And now lots of commentators around Europe are describing this party as far-right and extreme. Do you think that definition is fair, considering some of the threats that Germany is going through and the problems they're having with migration and integration?
Yeah, I do think it's a fair label. There are, as you mentioned, problems at the moment in terms of sort of integration in Germany, and particularly with the sort of the quite sharp rise in migration that the country's seen in the past 10 years. But the politicians who, particularly who lead the regional branches in Thuringen and Saxony, they are very happy to flirt with Nazi ideology, Nazi sort of symbolism, and they speak using rhetoric that is incredibly inflammatory. So I do think, particularly given Germany's history, particularly given the fact that there are politicians within the party who are so happy to basically dance on the line of acceptability with the sort of Nazi symbolism, I do think that is fair to call them extremist.
So, Lisa, if we come back to the shooting, so we hear that the person was an Islamist. They had propaganda on their phone or in their home. Can you tell us a bit more about what they knew about this person?
Yeah, that's right. So he, as you mentioned in your report, he was 18. There have been reports in the German press that he was known to the police in Austria, particularly for having sort of attacked classmates during his time at school. So he was already coming onto the police radar, as it were. And then beyond that, it has since become obvious as well that he was being radicalized through Islamist forums. So yeah, it is difficult to say because the German police haven't given that much information. They're still investigating it. But so far, it's definitely the case that he was on the police radar in the run-up to this attack, or event rather, sorry.
And Lisa, we have seen, I think you'll agree, a hardening of the language and the policies from the federal government, potentially as a rise of the AfD. But do you think their new measures are going to attract some of those voters moving towards the right? I mean, we've seen the Interior Minister touting knife-free zones to deal with the terrorism threat. I mean, I think lots of people might see that and say that's not sufficient. The problem we have is integration and extremism, not knives.
Yeah, definitely. I think this will draw more people towards the right. The AfD, the party will definitely be capitalising on this. And yeah, I think it's reasonable that the members of the German public feel quite nervous about this, and the fact that there have been at least 3 sort of attacks that have either come very close to taking place or have indeed taken place over the past sort of 3 to 4 months. I think it's very much at the forefront of people's minds. So yeah, I think the federal government, it's once again on their agenda. They've interestingly once again begun discussing the idea of how they could perhaps deport illegal migrants to the country. They've even apparently begun talks with Rwanda to take on the infrastructure that the British government has abandoned now that the Labour government has come in and scrapped our Rwanda scheme. So yeah, it will be interesting to see how this goes on, particularly as it is now sort of such a big focus for the federal government in Berlin. Will be very interesting to observe. I'm sure they will snap up our Rwanda plan. Lisa Hasseldean, thank you very much. She's the assistant online editor for The Spectator. Well, lots of you have been getting in touch with your views at gbnews.com/your say. This one from Colette. Colette says Starmer, Labour, have acted swiftly to close down any mass immigration or illegal migrant conversation by calling us far right and will make any debate about Islamophobia illegal too. So they will disperse these around the UK, and we can't say anything. That's a view, the sort of silencing of people. I mean, that's a view held by a lot of people in terms of not allowing us to speak.
There's an interesting line here from Claire Jones that how to smash the gangs is easy. With no customers, there are no gangs. Turn back the boats and they will soon have no customers. All right, it's an interesting insight. I mean, we always compare, I think, on this channel, the issue with the small boats crisis and the people smuggling gangs to the drug smuggling industry. These are both billion-dollar industries.
Well, it's like the slave trade as well. It's ultimately a lot of the people end up in the human slavery things as well.
And as Olivia says, these aren't small, weak gangs. They're organised, they're enterprising.
But she also said that they are small sort of groups of people, clusters, which I don't know how Keir Starmer smashes. It'll be very interesting to see how he does it, but still to come.
Yeah, British prisoners could serve their sentences in Estonian jails under a plan being considered by ministers. We'll have more on that coming up after the break.
Yeah, well, stay tuned. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. We are live online on TV and on digital radio. Get your thoughts in. We'll post your comments, gbnews.com/your say.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Further heavy rain to come across southern areas through today. We've got another weather warning in force. A very different story, though, across the north and west, with some of the warmest weather they've had so far this year across western areas of Scotland to come today. So plenty of sunshine, fairly light winds across the west, but quite a brisk easterly breeze should mix up any of that low cloud we've woken up to across eastern areas of Scotland, northeastern England. Should be quite a dry day for central areas areas of England and Wales too. Temperatures in the mid-20s for many areas here, but in the south, a very cool day with persistent rain, heavy rain coming and going through the day. It's most likely to turn quite heavy through this evening across parts of the southwest and parts of South Wales, but there is a weather warning for a large stretch of southern England and South Wales through Friday evening, so expect some travel disruption as it's been raining for a couple of days now across these areas. Continuing to see that different story into this evening across Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. Plenty of fine weather, and it's probably going to be quite a mild night actually across the parts of the northwest. Across the far north of Scotland though and the east, we'll see some haar starting to move in overnight with that easterly wind, and that will likely bring a fairly murky start to eastern areas of the north through Saturday morning. Further south, this band of rain will become a much weaker feature, so some respite to the heavy rain, but it's quite a lot of cloud around still, so wherever you are, a fairly mild start to Saturday. So slightly drier start to the day, but further outbreaks of rain are to come on Saturday. I think Saturday will be the drier day more widely of the weekend, but we'll likely see some heavy showers breaking out across central areas of England, parts of Wales throughout the afternoon, and potentially across the south coast towards the end of the day on Saturday, so there could be some further travel disruption. Temperatures around average for the time of year, still another very warm feeling day in the far northwest.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In East Yorkshire, the A165 is blocked south of Bridlington when there's an accident between Fraysthorpe and Barmston. Buses replaced trains between Shipley and Skipton after overhead line problems. The M6 in Lancashire is partly blocked northbound by an accident between junctions 30 and 31 near Preston. In Powys, the A490 is partly blocked by an accident north of Welshpool. Buses replaced trains between Carmarthen and Milford Haven because of a signalling problem. On the M4 in Newport, there's a lane closed westbound where someone's broken down between junctions 25 and 25A from Kyle-Leon to Newport, causing queues. In London, the A41 is closed between Stanmore and the M1 because of a burst water main, causing delays. Also in London, the A10 is closed at Stamford Hill after an accident with long delays towards there. And train services are suspended between Hurst Green and Uckfield, between Romsey and Eastleigh by Chandler's Ford because of signalling problems.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock on Friday, the 6th of September, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Charlie Peters and Nana Akua.
Prisons for hire. British prisoners could serve their sentences in Estonian jails. Now, that is under a plan being considered by ministers.
Small Boat Summit. The Home Secretary will chair a meeting with ministers and law enforcement today to discuss plans to tackle smuggling gangs.
Scampton scrapped. Labour ditches plans to house asylum seekers in RAF Scampton.
And is the Rwanda scheme being rehomed? Germany is considering deporting migrants to British-funded facilities in the East African nation.
Britain's best ever brew. Which budget tea bag has been declared superior to the big-name brands? We'll reveal that later.
Lovely dancing there, Nana. You just missed that.
Little dance to the music. We always do enjoy that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Well, they could be dancing off to Estonia, some prisoners shortly.
Could be. I think it's a bit of a false economy, though, because hold your horses. It might sound like £10,000-20,000 a prisoner, but then you've got to counter in. Their family might come to visit.
Visitation
rights. Some
rights.
prison wardens there as well.
Well, these issues have been touted for years, so perhaps not so confident this is going to land this time, but we'll see.
And anyway, what are they doing in Estonia that their jails are empty? Well, we'd love to hear what you think. Send us your views, post your comments. I'd be more interested in that. gbnews.com/you'll say. But first, let's get your news with Sam Francis.
Charlie, Nana, thank you very much indeed. Good morning to you. Just coming up to 2 minutes past 10. And on the topic of prisons, just a very quick breaking line to bring you from the Ministry of Justice that the number of people in prisons in England and Wales has hit another record high. In just the last few minutes, we've received the latest figures from the Ministry of Justice. It stands now at 88,521 people across England and Wales. That is now a record high. That number had been climbing for the last 3 years, but as I say, it now hits 88,521 people in prison across the country. In other news, though, the Home Secretary is leading a summit today to address the escalating crisis of people smuggling across the English Channel. The meeting comes in response to a tragic incident this week where 12 lives were lost when a boat capsized, the deadliest crossing so far this year. Vet Cooper will be joined by key cabinet ministers, intelligence officials and law enforcement agencies to target criminal smuggling networks. She says there's a moral imperative to act and wants to see tighter collaboration with European partners. With over 21,000 arrivals so far this year, the summit will also focus on enhancing the new Border Security Command. Germany is considering using British-funded facilities in Rwanda to deport migrants entering the European Union illegally. It comes as Berlin is facing mounting pressure to curb illegal migration following last month's ISIS-linked stabbing at a festival. Germany's special representative for migration agreements thinks the EU should repurpose the asylum facilities that Britain set up, which were recently scrapped by the Labour government. MPs and campaigners in Lincolnshire are celebrating the decision to scrap plans to house migrants at RAF Scampton. The government claims it fails to represent value for money for the taxpayer. The former Lincolnshire airbase was estimated to have cost £200 million by 2027, 60 million of which has been spent so far. The government will now close and sell the site, focusing instead on what it's calling faster asylum processing and border security improvements. Well, our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has been speaking to Charlie and Nana outside RAF Scampton.
The Labour government says despite £60 million being spent on the former RAF airbase, it is not value for money for the taxpayer, and between now and 2027, the £121 million that would have been spent can be better spent elsewhere.
A Royal Navy investigation is continuing today after a helicopter ditched in the English Channel during a night flying exercise, sadly killing one crew member. The incident happened near Dorset on Wednesday night during a training exercise with HMS Queen Elizabeth. 2 other crew members were rescued and taken to hospital. The family of the victims has been informed, while both the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and the Defence Secretary have said they are deeply saddened to hear about his tragic death. Well, the Merlin Mk4 helicopter is used by the Royal Marines globally, and experts will now be assessing the fleet for any technical issues. The UK is sending 650 missiles to Ukraine in a £160 million boost to its defence against Russia. John Healey, making his first appearance as Defence Secretary, will make the announcement at a summit in Germany later. The missiles are part of a larger £3 billion aid package and will be delivered by the end of the year. It's reported that Vladimir Putin has said he is open to peace talks with Ukraine, but with conditions. After more than 2 years of conflict, the Russian president suggested he's ready to renegotiate a previously failed deal from talks in Istanbul early in the war. At the Eastern Economic Forum, Putin has suggested that China, India and Brazil could be mediators for negotiations. It comes just weeks after Ukraine's surprise attack on Russian soil, which Kyiv has claimed shifts the balance in their favour. Scotland is setting new boundaries to give women unobstructed access to abortion services. From the 24th of this month, the Abortion Services Act will make it a criminal offence to interfere with or harass anyone accessing or providing abortion services within 200 metres of designated facilities. That law aims to safeguard women and staff from possible intimidation and distress around hospitals or clinics. In the US, officials have arrested the father of a 14-year-old boy accused of a deadly school shooting. In that rare legal move, Colin Gray faces multiple charges, including involuntary manslaughter, for allegedly allowing his son to access the weapon that was used in the attack that sadly killed 4 and wounded 9. Investigators have revealed both the 54-year-old and his son had previously been questioned in 2023 over online threats about carrying out a possible school shooting. The teenager, Colt Gray, used a semi-automatic rifle in the incident and will be tried as an adult. And finally, back here at home, southern England and South Wales are in for a wet end to the week as heavy rain is set to bring risks of travel disruption and possible flooding. The Met Office has issued a yellow weather warning in place until midnight tonight, following downpours that have already affected parts of the country. Commuters are being warned to prepare for challenging driving conditions and possible road closures. But brighter skies further north, temperatures could reach 27 degrees Celsius in parts of Scotland, potentially marking the warmest day of the year so far. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, I might book a flight to Scotland to catch the sun. I'll be back in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hello and welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom, live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Charlie Peters and Nana Akweer.
Well, British criminals could serve their prison sentences in Estonia under plans being considered by the government in a bid to ease overcrowding in jails.
The number of people in British prisons has hit a record high. Now, 88,521 people across England and Wales, according to the latest figures just released by the Ministry of Justice.
Estonia's low crime rate has left its prisons half empty, so could they be the solution to the prison crisis? Retired prison governor and author Vanessa Frake joins us now. Vanessa, thank you very much for joining us. On the surface, this sounds like a wonderful idea. It'd cost between £10,000 to £20,000 as opposed to over £100,000 in this country. But it's not all it seems, is it, really? I mean, because it will potentially cost a lot more, and I'm sure that Estonia will see this as a chance to charge premium prices because we're desperate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the only people that are going to make money out of this are A, the Estonian government, and B, lawyers, because, look, we can't get boat people back to their countries. We can't get foreign national prisoners back to their countries. What on earth chance have we got of sending British prisoners to Estonia to complete their sentences? You know, the human rights lawyers will jump all over this and it will end up costing us thousands.
Vanessa, this plan was actually first proposed last year by the former Justice Secretary Alex Chalk, and Labour slammed it as Tory incompetence and a sign of underinvestment. Do you think Labour are picking up an idea that they criticise themselves, or is this just a desperate move?
I think it's probably desperate move, desperate measures. I think they're clutching at straws. You know, don't forget this early release scheme that we keep hearing so much about. This is a temporary measure. This isn't going to solve our prison crisis. You know, it runs much, much deeper than that. And I think, you know, it's going to take something eye-opening to solve it. You know, we are stuck in this sort of roundabout of emptying a few out and then another load come in. And again, you know, the figures out this morning saying about it's an all-time high. Well, that's, you know, that's the rioters, that's the Notting Hill Carnival, you know, all things that, you know, we can't plan for. And, you know, it's a bit like running a bath. You empty a bit of water out and it's still filling up. And unfortunately, that's how our prisoners are.
I was reading that apparently in this country we're addicted to long sentences, which is why the prisons are so full as they are. Is there any real truth to that? Because I suspect if you do something bad and it's awful, then you should get a long sentence. So what's wrong with that? I mean, I'm an advocate. I propose the death penalty for those who actually deserve it. But, you know, obviously that's another topic. But are we really addicted to long sentences?
I think more to the point, we're addicted to locking people up. I think we're addicted to locking people up for crimes such as non-payment of council tax, non-payment of TV licenses, first-time offenders, you know, that sort of thing. And Keir Starmer was an excellent example. You know, the riots, he wanted it all brought forward. He wanted to show how hard he was on crime, and ended up, you know, locking grannies up for making stupid comments on social medias. You know, this has got to change. I absolutely am all for, you know, those that deserve violent crimes deserve to be locked up, being locked up. Absolutely. But there are a lot of people who get put in prison who, in my opinion, and others, I hasten to add, shouldn't be there.
And Vanessa, you've been talking about this flow, people being released, then brought back into prison. We have this so-called mass release of prisoners coming up next week on Tuesday, a further round set for October. Is the problem here that we just haven't built enough prisons? They're critical national infrastructure, but not enough are in the pipeline?
Well, that is a problem. And also, we've got a lot of old Victoriana prisons that are no longer fit for purpose. You know, they're old, they're not modern, they haven't got modern technology. So, you know, this just it encompasses, you know, what is wrong with our prison system. It's had no funding, literally no funding over the last 15 years. And it has been running to the ground. And, you know, it's going to take quite a bit of money to get it back on track to a prison system and justice system that we can be proud of.
Vanessa Frake, thank you very much. She's a retired prison governor and also an author. Thank you for that.
Well, it's an interesting discussion there. I think Vanessa in particular, I mean, I've just seen some of the comments and you're also reacting to this plan. A lot of people saying, if there's one way to deal with moving prisoners to Estonia, why not remove foreign national offenders back to their country of origin? I mean, I think that's quite an enlightening request. I mean, there are 10,000 foreign nationals held in custody across prisons in England and Wales as of March this year. It's potentially risen since then. Move them to Estonia, or perhaps just return them to country of origin?
Well, yeah, if they're foreign prisoners, then they should go back there. I don't see why they wouldn't do that anyway. I don't know why we insist on imprisoning people in this country if they've done something where they could be deported. But this one here from Padraig, he said, Estonian jails, why not send the prisoners to Rwanda instead and let them fend for themselves? This way Germany can send their immigrants to Estonia instead. They are in the EU, we are not. Yeah, you know what, though? For me, it's a bit of hypocrisy from the Labour government, isn't it? Because, as you said, Alex Chalk came up with the concept and they poo-pooed it, smacked it down, made sure it didn't happen, and now there they are.
Yeah, well, they'll say that they've adopted an appalling system, a creaking Victorian prison system, so many cells at their capacity. They'll say they've got to take any measure possible to deal with this problem.
Utter hypocrisy. But up next, we'll be taking a look at Prince William's dashing new look. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Janis Joplin shot to fame in 1967, but after releasing 3 albums, she was dead 3 years later at the age of 27, having overdosed on heroin.
Yes, very, very brief life, but towering influence. People like Pink in the modern day have said that she is the influence. But she was around so briefly, I guess, burned very brightly and a very troubled soul. And what we've got is A Night with Janis Joplin, the musical. And I think a lot of the problems, it's been getting very mixed reviews, and I think the problem is with this subtitle, the musical. does it no justice at all.
Really?
It's staggering, stunning in an audience. So what we have is a night with. It's as if she's in concert. She's sitting on the stage, she's swinging from a bottle, and she's singing and giving us little memories, thoughts on life.
I think I see where you're going, because some critics have said it's a fantastic individual performance that sits in an empty vessel of a show.
Yeah.
And you're saying that that's because the expectations of what the show is have been wrong.
Yes, I agree. And I do think that it's obviously a very loving show. There's very little reference to drugs. There's a bit of a throwaway comment. So we don't really look at the demons. What we do is we explore womanhood very powerfully, but also the blues.
How long do we have to see this?
This one it's on until September the 28th. It's on at the Peacock, which is just down by Aldwych in London.
Quite a small auditorium, actually.
No, it's a big auditorium. So the Peacock is it's a bit of a barn of a room. And again, I would say this show might be better in a slightly smaller venue, but I cannot recommend the performances highly enough.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Right, 17 minutes after 10 o'clock. Good morning. This is Britain's Newsroom with Charlie Peters and Nana Aquir. Joining us, former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire and broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon in the studio for the papers. That was interesting. We caught you there going...
rushing in.
I know. So on that bombshell, should we start with our first story? Joachim Stump, now he's Germany's migration commissioner. He's proposed using Rwanda as the third-party country for migrants, with growing pressure on the coalition. Scarlett Maguire.
I know. Well, one of the difference, I think the main difference, is that they're going to process people and send the people who you can't send back to Rwanda. And there is a real problem about when you process people, and so you take the refugees, and then there are the immigrants where you just can't send them back to their home countries. And
but we would have that same problem here, and Rwanda was meant for those people.
No, Nana, Rwanda was for anybody. I had
for anyone, yes, exactly.
Rwanda was meant to send everybody there.
Well, not for everybody, but for for those who couldn't be sent back to the country.
Look, I had a young woman stay with me who was supposed to go to Rwanda, and it was stopped because of the general election. She came from Eritrea and was a Pentecostal Christian who was being persecuted.
Yeah, no. I'm not saying I'm not saying that it wasn't potentially for anybody, but I'm saying that one of those type of people were those who had nowhere to be sent back, and that's where an element that the Germans are using. Yes, it was potentially for everybody, but I'm saying where it comes to the people who you literally cannot send back, Rwanda was vital.
No, but that's not how it was being used. What I'm saying is that because the processing was going to be done in Rwanda, whereas in Germany the processing is going to be done in Germany, and the people that they don't want and can't be sent.
The reality is, the infrastructure has been set up and paid for by the UK taxpayer, OK? Germany, as far as I am aware, are still, at the moment, members of the European Union. Was it not the ECHR that prevented us from actually using Rwanda as a means of processing and actually the removal of proposed asylum seekers from this country to Rwanda?
Well, I suppose Germany might try and get around that by virtue of this commissioner saying in this podcast yesterday that it's going to be a move monitored by the UN, so that could possibly tick a few of those legal boxes. And they've also specified, this commissioner, that it would be only for those entering on the eastern border from Belarus. So it's not a blanket ban, not like the proposal that Britain might have had, with everyone arriving on small boats being immediately deported and processed in East Africa. This process is more specifically for a certain set of arrivals.
Don't you think they might the Germans might have actually learned from us and thought, OK, let's get the UN involved. UN's quite woolly, touchy-feely.
Well, they
it'll be
send people
fine.
to Rwanda anyway, don't they?
Well, exactly, Nana. So, I mean, I don't understand why we couldn't have used it. And to be fair, with the volume of people coming over at the moment on the boats, it would seem to me that it did actually act as a bit of a deterrent.
Well, it did, and we sent. I saw Patrick Christie out speaking to the migrants who were there in tents, very near to this studio, and speaking to others, and they all said that it was a deterrent. And they were, and we have rumours. You said that that people were saying that actually they were waiting for Keir Starmer.
There's no shortage of newspaper reporters who've been in northern France and said that they're happy with the change of government and that Rwanda being off the table has removed a deterrent for them. Now, Labour, on their part, will say that they've sped up deportations since they got into power, and they're going to smash the game.
But, I mean, that's what you have to do is you have to speed up deportations. I mean, that's what frightens people, is that for some reason that I do not understand, we had masses of Albanians coming over about a year ago, right? And then they were just deported. I mean, a deal was done with Albania, they were deported. We don't have Albanians coming over anymore. I mean, that's how you stop it.
That's how you stop it. But now we had lots of people from Vietnam coming over, and, you know, what if it's a country that doesn't really want to negotiate with you on that score? Then you have to send people somewhere. So this is a part of the... Listen, it's a part of the equation that we have completely walked away from, just without even seeing how it could work as a deterrent, with no alternative, nothing already in place. There's nothing in place.
There's nothing in place, but we've got diplomats everywhere in the world. Why aren't they sending the message to these countries, look, don't go. There is nothing for you in the UK. Why are you wanting to leave here? I'm here, I'm a diplomat. Why do you want to leave? That is the question. We need to go back to grassroots. We need to focus and put the optic on why they're leaving and get to grips with that.
They're coming here, and a lot of the EU and European Union countries have complained about our generosity. Was it Germany that's saying they're going to scale down on what the migrants can get now?
Yes, well, they're reacting, obviously, to a very tense political moment with the rise of the AfD and a recent spate of Islamist attacks. But, I mean, we saw last week Germany sent back 28 Afghan migrants back to Afghanistan without even needing to do a deal with the Taliban.
And Spain, the Spanish Navy got on top of a migrant boat trying to get into Spain. The Europe are starting to turn now.
Absolutely. Last year...
They really, really are.
France deported someone in breach of an ECHR ruling. They got the ruling, said you can't do it, they ignored it and they went ahead with it. Many people on the channel at the time, when that was reported last year, said, if Paris can do it, why can't we?
Well, why do you think we are not doing this then, Scarlett? Because there, you know, other countries who are of equivalence in terms of their human rights are turning things back or doing things against. Why are we not doing it?
I think we are, actually. I think we are going to do it. I mean, look, so there is a summit today done by Angela Eagle. We're talking about how to stop the boats. So I heard her being interviewed, not on this programme, being accused that because she was literally stopping the boats, I mean, because the boats are being stopped from bringing over, therefore the other boats are overcrowded, therefore it's her fault that people are dying, right? Well, I mean, you just can't win. Well, so they are beginning to literally stop the boat, because the boats come over from Turkey and they can be.
But this is a national conference, so this is a national gathering. I don't hear anybody that they've got anybody from Turkey that they're talking to within this particular conversation. So to me, this is talks internally about this national conversation when it's actually an international.
You're absolutely right. It is an international problem, and what is really important is for us to understand that when they say Britain is a soft touch, actually France and Germany, many more than us.
Yeah, but they're much bigger landmass. They're bigger landmass, exactly.
I know, but they still have an awful lot of people coming in.
No. You have to be proportionate. You have to be proportionate when you're saying that, because these countries are far bigger than the United Kingdom. So there's no point using that as.
No, but what I'm saying is that we have to understand that a lot of the migrants, they come through the Mediterranean, right? Many of them stop off, right, in Italy, in Spain, in France, in Germany. It's a few that actually get through.
That's irrelevant, yeah.
I think we have to... that you said, and you're absolutely right, It is an international problem. It's a European problem and it's an international problem.
In the Labour's defence, the government has said that they'll be increasing the number of NCA officers, Britain's FBI, in Interpol by 50%. There will be a rise. They've also pointed to covert operations globally by MI5 and associated institutions. Labour are saying that they're going to put their border security command not on a national footing, but on an international footing.
Is that once they get someone to run it because they've got anybody in it?
Exactly. Border Force are going on strike. I mean, come on.
No, but actually the other thing they're doing, which Angela Eagle said, is they're processing these people who are in hotels, who should not be in hotels, right? They should be processed. They should either be refugees or we should be aiming to send them back.
It's a dispersal thing, isn't it? So they're dispersing them. But my problem is this, that's all very well, but you don't know who you're dispersing. You don't know enough about them. And you're dispersing them in communities. And as we know, in certain areas, there's a lot of crime, in particular in Germany and places like that, where there's seen a massive increase in crime, a lot of it from people who've come there to their country illegally.
Well, do you know what we should be doing in Britain? We should actually be reopening the Nightingale hospitals that were not even used during the COVID pandemic. House the illegal migrants there and start processing there and then.
So, Claire, we've heard today that they're also going to shut down RAF Scampton. There's this moving away. Also, the Bibby Stockholm was closed very soon after the start of the government. Are you concerned, as Nana is clearly, about this dispersal accommodation, about asylum seekers being processed, as it were, in the community?
Yes, I am. And if it takes MPs like Edward Lee to stand up and fight for his constituency, as he has done, and now the local hotel will not be used to house illegal immigrants and asylum seekers, we just don't know who we're letting in.
Exactly.
It's bad enough putting
prisoners, dispersing all the prisoners
dispersing
out there.
prisoners and, you know, people who have committed sex offences back into the community, and we don't know if they've been fully rehabilitated, and then you get this mob culture. It's very much us and them. It's the othering of people that I can't stand. It's the othering of people that leads to anarchy and the othering of people that leads to vindictiveness and serious crime.
Yeah, I'm sure lots of people living in those local communities will be a bit concerned that they won't be able to voice their concerns about dispersal accommodation for fear of being clamped down on by the authorities.
Well, let's end on a slightly lighter note, because I want to talk about this. So this common food dye that's found to make skin and muscle temporarily transparent. So if instead of having to open people up, you can actually put this dye on. Potentially, I mean, this is only on animals first.
Right.
On mice.
So what it does is they've put it on a mouse's tummy, and you can see through
all the organs.
All the organs. So instead of having to have X-ray, you put on this food dye, and you can see the problem.
They can see the organs.
Well, all I can say is it needs a lot of dye to see through mine.
Very good, darling. Very good.
I think it sounds. I mean, it's one of those breakthrough things, like keyhole surgery, right? That actually can make a real difference.
Oh, I think it's scary. It really is scary.
It's so simple, though, isn't it? You could do this. Would be a good Halloween thing. I'll get me some of that for Halloween. It'd be like that.
It means that you can put it on and look at and see if you've got a broken bone, right? I mean, instead of having to go to an X-ray, you just put this on. Oh yeah. Bone's broken here, we can see.
I just feel sorry for the mice. It's always them being tested on with these things, aren't they? The world's hardest working little scientists. The poor things.
And you know what happens straight afterwards? They get killed.
Oh, no.
All animals that are used for experiments
listen to me, I say,
oh,
no, and I have a mousetrap in my house now.
Of course you do.
Yeah, but
everyone
we
needs
don't
them
want mice in our house.
Well, oh, that's different, is it, Scott? This is the lefty thing, isn't it? It's terrible. We don't want mice in your house.
No, they're really funny.
Two-tier micing.
Oh, exactly. Not again. I love that. I think it's a pretty stern breakthrough. If it does work on humans,
I wonder what the thought process is, right, with the boffins in these labs. What do they come up with? Do they sit and watch Harry Potter, right, and Lord of the Rings and think, gosh, what can we actually do here? What can we invent? We'll put it through that it's some massive thing that we can actually learn from and look through, and they're looking through.
That's quite an exciting discovery. It could save you the radiation from those X-rays. Thank you very much. It's the former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire, and broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon.
Well, it's time for your news headlines now with Sam Francis. Plenty more coming up after the break.
Very good morning to you from the newsroom at 10:30 exactly, and the top story this hour. The Home Secretary is leading a summit today to address the escalating crisis of people smuggling across the English Channel. That meeting comes in response to a tragic incident this week where 12 lives were lost when a boat capsized in the deadliest crossing so far this year. Yvette Cooper will be joined by key cabinet ministers, intelligence officials and law enforcement agencies to target criminal smuggling networks. She says there's a moral imperative to act and wants to see tighter collaboration with European partners. Well, with over 21,000 arrivals so far this year, the summit will also focus on enhancing the new Border Security Command. Germany is considering using British-funded facilities in Rwanda to deport migrants entering the EU. It comes as Berlin faces mounting pressure to curb illegal migration following last month's ISIS-linked stabbing at a festival. German officials think that the EU should repurpose the asylum facilities that Britain set up, which were recently scrapped by Sir Keir Starmer. Our political correspondent Olivia Utley has more.
There will be those who argue, and in fact Conservative MPs are already arguing, that if the Rwanda policy is good enough for Germany, if Germany believes it will act as a sufficient deterrent to stop illegal immigrants coming over to Germany, then why did Keir Starmer choose to throw out that policy on his first day in office and replace it with this rather nebulous plan to smash the gangs?
MPs and campaigners in Lincolnshire are celebrating the decision to scrap plans to house migrants at RAF Scampton. The government claims it fails to represent value for taxpayers' money. The former Lincolnshire airbase was estimated to have cost £200 million by 2027, £60 million of which has already been spent. The government will now close and sell the site, focusing instead on what it's calling faster asylum processing. Our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis is outside the RAF base.
The Labour government says despite £60 million being spent on the former RAF airbase, it is not value for money for the taxpayer, and between now and 2027, the £121 million that would have been spent can be better spent elsewhere.
The UK prison population has hit a record high with 88,521 inmates as of this morning. That's 171 more than last week's peak. The surge, driven by recent nationwide disorder, has seen the prison population now rise by over 1,000 in just the last month. In response, the government's considering renting jail cells in Estonia to ease overcrowding. Meanwhile, a temporary early release scheme is set to begin on the 10th of September. And southern England and South Wales are in for a wet end to the week as heavy rain brings the risk of travel disruption and possible flooding. The Met Office has issued another yellow warning in place until midnight tonight following downpours that have already affected some parts of Devon. Meanwhile, though, temperatures could reach up to 27 degrees in parts of Scotland, potentially marking it the warmest day of the year. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'm Sam Francis, back with a full roundup at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Up next, the father of a 14-year-old accused of a deadly shooting at a school in the US has been arrested and charged after gifting his son a rifle. We'll have the latest on that story coming soon.
You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. Further heavy rain to come across southern areas through today. We've got another weather warning in force. A very different story though across the north and west, with some of the warmest weather they've had so far this year across western areas of Scotland to come today. So plenty of sunshine, fairly light winds across the west, but quite a brisk easterly breeze should mix up any of that low cloud we've woken up to across eastern areas of Scotland, northeastern England. Should be quite a dry day for central areas of England and Wales too. Temperatures in the mid-20s for many areas here, but in the south a very cool day with persistent rain, heavy rain coming and going through the day. It's most likely to turn quite heavy through this evening across parts of the southwest and parts of South Wales, but there is a weather warning for a large stretch of southern England and South Wales through Friday evening, so expect some travel disruption as it's been raining for a couple of days now across these areas. Continuing to see that different story into this evening across Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. Plenty of fine weather, and it's probably going to be quite a mild night actually across the parts of the northwest. Across the far north of Scotland though and the east, we'll see some HAR starting to move in overnight with that easterly wind, and that will likely bring a fairly murky start to eastern areas of the north through Saturday morning. Further south, this band of rain will become a much weaker feature, so some respite to the heavy rain, but it's quite a lot of cloud around still, so wherever you are, a fairly mild start to Saturday. So slightly drier start to the day, but further outbreaks of rain are to come on Saturday. I think Saturday will be the drier day more widely of the weekend, but we'll likely see some heavy showers breaking out across central areas of England, parts of Wales throughout the afternoon, and potentially across the south coast towards the end of the day on Saturday. So there could be some further travel disruption. Temperatures around average for the time of year. Still another very warm feeling day in the far northwest.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Dundee, the A929 is closed each way along Princes Street in Dundee for an investigation. In East Yorkshire, the A165 is blocked by an accident south of Bridlington. Buses replace trains between Shipley and Skipton because of overhead line problems. Powys, the A490 is partly blocked by an accident north of Welshpool. Buses replace trains between Carmarthen and Milford Haven because of a signalling problem. On the M4 in Newport, there's a lane closed westbound where someone's broken down between junctions 25 and 25A from Kaya Leon to Newport, causing queues. In London, the A41 is closed northbound from Stanmore to Elstree because of a burst water main, and the A10 is closed at Stamford Hill after an accident with long delays towards there. And as you divert on the M3 in Surrey, the outside lane's closed northbound where someone's broken down at junction 4 at Camberley, causing delays, and train service is suspended between Hurst Green and Uckfield.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
It's 37 minutes past 10. This is Britain's Newsroom with Charlie Peters and Nana Akweer. Now, in the US, officials have arrested the father of a 14-year-old accused of a deadly school shooting. Colin Gray faces multiple charges.
Wait, it was just two.
It was just two?
You did the extra bit.
Did I?
No, carry on.
I'm in trouble.
Sorry, no,
Colin Gray faces multiple charges, including voluntary manslaughter, for allegedly allowing his son to access the weapon used in the attack that killed 4 and wounded 9.
Well, investigators have revealed both the 54-year-old and his son had previously been questioned in 2003 over online threats about carrying out a school shooting. The teenager, Colt Gray, used a semi-automatic rifle in the incident and will be tried as an adult. Well, let's cross over to New York now, where criminal lawyer Deborah Blum joins us live. Now, Deborah, this is quite concerning, firstly, because they've been talking about this sort of thing prior to what has happened, and secondly, because the son, usually they sort of commit suicide, the person who's doing the shooting. He didn't do that. He's alive. Is this the reason, one of the reasons why they're also going for the father as well?
So, no, I actually believe it's because there's been a trend in the United States to prosecute the parents of children who commit these horrific acts. We saw that in 2023 with the conviction of the Crumbleys for their son's school shooting, and now we're seeing it here where this child was on a watch list. His father had guns in the home, and it's possible the police are investigating whether he actually purchased this weapon for his son used in this tragic shooting.
Do you think, then, that that has acted, in a sense, as a deterrent? Because parents, if they could potentially be tried for the crimes of their children, do you think that has worked as a deterrent in the United States?
Well, sadly, it hasn't worked because we've had this scenario before in recent history, very recent history, and it's still going on as it did here, where 2 teachers and 2 students tragically lost their lives. What I think is very interesting in the United States, though, is that children as young as 14 years old, such as Colt Gray, the perpetrator here, is being charged as an adult. I actually have a 14-year-old who's now 15 who is alleged to have killed a 13-year-old, and he's also being charged as an adult. As tragic and terrible as these shootings and murders are, these are children, and we are clearly doing something wrong in the United States where this continues to happen. And I don't feel, as a criminal defense attorney, that the answer is for these children to be charged as adults. Not that, yeah.
Well, but also, Deborah, you have this issue now where you're saying the parents are increasingly being involved in the charges and the prosecution and the all-round criminal justice effort. What has sparked that change with prosecutors moving more towards the responsibility of parents? What signalled that change?
Well, as you know, we've had so many of these school shootings in the U.S., and nothing seems to be stopping them. I mean, a common theme amongst them is that these children are gaming, they're using the internet to make posts. I think overall, there needs to be an overhaul in the school system where each of the schools has to have security when the children come in. I mean, that's a terrible thing that each of these schools, even in non-urban settings, need to have security, because security could prevent it, but that's not even enough. In the case that I have now, my client was able to bring a weapon, you know. It's just really tragic because there aren't enough steps in place, and that's something we need to look at. We need to look at the violence of children. We need to look at parents who continue to have weapons in their home that are unsecured, that their children are able to have. It's not very hard to be able to secure your weapon. So there's so many steps.
I was going to say, I noticed that you don't sort of talk about repealing any of the gun laws in America, and it seems that it's always, well, we need to maybe secure the guns or do this. I mean, why should anybody be allowed to have a semi-automatic weapon when that is purely for mass massacre? There's no other reason, and why would you have that and be allowed to have that when at the end of the day that's its only function? That's its only function, unless you're in a war zone, which, well, they're not.
That's, you know, a very good point. I'm not going to put my position on guns here, but certainly this needs to be controlled, and there needs to be way fewer semi-automatic weapons. There just needs to be a complete change in how people have weapons, whether they can have weapons, who's able to get a weapon. There's a complete breakdown that someone's able to have a whole arsenal of weapons in their home, have children in the home, and then their child is able to access those weapons and even potentially buy a weapon for a 14-year-old. That is completely unacceptable, and why Colin Gray is being charged here. I personally, as a defense attorney, don't know that I see a large enough nexus for him to be charged with second-degree murder.
Do you think?
I can see the involuntary manslaughter. You know, there are legal definitions that need to be met, and I'm not sure that he's going to meet all of those definitions here, but parents definitely should be held accountable. You can't purchase a 14-year-old a gun.
Well, if they were chatting about a school shooting and things like that, you have the death penalty in Georgia as well. Very briefly, we are running out of time. Is there any chance that that could be applied?
You know, I think that there's definitely a possibility for that to be applied. Likely not for the 14-year-old. I think that it's a second-degree murder. I don't believe that you would have the death penalty for that for Colin Gray, but there will be serious consequences, and this is likely to go to trial because it's one of those cases as a defense attorney where you advise your client to go to trial because you're not getting an offer that would make it worth it for you to take.
Wow.
So you roll the dice, for lack of a better word.
Well, Deborah Blum, criminal lawyer based in New York, thank you very much for joining us this morning. Well, still ahead, the family of a man who was murdered by an asylum seeker are accusing authorities of trying to sweep it under the carpet.
Well, we'll be discussing that next. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Sarah, welcome to the show. Obviously, you work for a tobacco company, so a little caveat there to slip in. Nevertheless, it's no surprise that the illegal market is growing so much. When you look at the cost of cigarettes in Britain, huge amounts of duty, and oftentimes, of course, criminality always finds its way into the system. Tell us more about your report.
Absolutely. I mean, up to 90% of a packet of cigarettes is tax. And in the last year, there's been 2 tax increases that have equated more to the last 3 years combined. So now, if you're a roll-your-own smoker, a 30-gram pouch of roll-your-own will cost £22.50, but you can buy a counterfeit pack of 50 grams for £3. So there's a massive disparity. A lot of illegal tobacco is imported, but we do also have a problem in the UK with illegal tobacco factories. So in the last month, there's been an illegal tobacco factory in Gateshead, in Bury, busted, producing roll-your-own tobacco. And on the 12th of July this month, West Midlands gang illegal tobacco factory, the gang was found guilty of producing illegal tobacco, and that was more than £5 million lost tax revenue to the government. And actually, all of those people found guilty got a suspended sentence.
And how does that work? They're literally importing container loads of raw tobacco and packaging it up in factories in Britain, and they're using what appears to be British packaging illegally?
Yeah, some of it is branded packaging, so some of it isn't the kind of unbranded packaging we'd see on cigarettes and roll-your-own now, but it's relatively simple to reproduce, especially RYO. Our own pack swap data now shows that about 50% of the roll-your-own market is illegal tobacco.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 10:47. This is Britain's Newsroom with Charlie Peters and Nano Queer.
Now, the family of a man murdered by an Afghan asylum seeker has slammed the decision not to hold an inquest into his death, accusing authorities of trying to sweep it under the carpet.
Tom Roberts, 21, a nightclub DJ and aspiring Royal Marine, was stabbed in the chest by an Afghan, Mr. Lawangeen Abdul Rahimzai, outside a subway in March 2022 when he tried to intervene in a row over an e-scooter. Abdul Rahimzai, who was actually 19, had already murdered 2 people in Serbia before being allowed into the UK, posing as a 14-year-old orphan.
Well, our former Director General of the UK Border Force, Tony Smith, joins us now.
Tony, looking at all of the litany of failures in this case, he arrived claiming to be 14. He was actually 19. So much information not shared between government departments. Do you think this is an example of systemic failure by our agencies?
I think personally, Charlie, my heart goes out to the victim and the victim's families for what has been a terrible incident. And I think they are entitled, actually, to have a review, a serious review of this case to find out what went wrong and how this person got into the country, given his antecedents that have come to light subsequently. I mean, it does raise a number of questions, Charlie. I mean, there is obviously the age issue. I mean, he was actually 18 when he entered the country, but he said he was 14. It's not new. I mean, we get lots and lots of cases like this. The Border Force are urged to err on the side of caution. And so, you know, wrongly, he was, we now know wrongly, he was declared to be a minor. But that, you know, even if he'd been declared to be an adult, he probably still would have been admitted and ended up in an asylum hotel somewhere as an Afghan asylum seeker. So I don't think that's a critical issue. For me, the bigger issue is the checks that were done by the police after he entered the country, where it was discovered that he had claimed asylum in Norway. He had murdered 2 people in Serbia. It was clearly on some international databases. Now, I do know we are able to fingerprint any asylum seeker over the age of 5 coming into this country, and those fingerprints are sent off for analysis to UK databases, mainly the Immigration Asylum Database, see if he's known here, the previous immigration, and to the UK criminal database. But he hadn't been here before. These crimes were perpetrated in Europe and beyond. And there are biometric databases around in Interpol. There are biometric databases around elsewhere. My inquiry really is, what happens to those biometrics other than are they being sent routinely to cases where we can do further checks with other countries in Europe and beyond? Are they being routinely shared with Interpol in every case? Or not? Because I do think this does raise some very serious questions about our screening mechanisms. I mean, we are quite thorough. We do what we can. We ask them all the questions we can, but they turn up without documents. You haven't got a lot to go on other than where they come from and what they tell you.
Tony,
but you have got the biometrics. I think that's the key. The fingerprints and the photograph.
Didn't a dentist? Didn't a dentist identify that he was potentially older than he was saying he was? I think they claimed he was 14, and then a dentist identified that perhaps he's a bit older. It's like the agencies aren't speaking to each other. But more concerning, if the Labour government are planning to allow migrants to be dispersed within the community and they're closing these centres where at least we have a chance for them to stay in that area, how are they going to ensure that those coming here by boats or whatever are actually are not ex-criminals or murderers and things like that?
Exactly, Nana. That is the key question that needs to be answered. I worked there for a long time. I had a lot of experience about how this all works at the border. And we're not bad, but there clearly is a gap here. And you need to remember the border force is under huge pressure, timeliness pressure, particularly in the small boats area. This chap arrived at Poole, but I mean, most of the small boats come into Manston. We're not allowed to hold people there for more than about 24 hours or we get into trouble. For unlawful detention. I mean, we have got equipment there, but I'm really worried that, we are not clearly doing all of the checks that we might be able to do. And I would like to see something published about what checks are being done internationally, what other research is being done internationally. Are there circumstances where you might want to detain somebody, actually, Nana? You might want to say, well, I'm sorry, we're not going to put you in. So you're staying here because we've got sufficient doubts about you that raise these difficulties. And I think we've got ourselves caught up in a process of a very swift flow through the borders, screening where we can. But this is a terrible case. Let's make no bounds about it. It is truly embarrassing.
Yes, Tony, on that point, I mean...
it emerged, Charlie, by the police after the event, after he was admitted. That's my problem.
Yeah.
And my question is, well, if the police can find all this out, after the event, well, why was it not available to the border force earlier on in the process? And I simply don't know the answer to that.
And Tony, I mean, you said that more details need to be assessed here. We need a cleaner understanding of what happened. But the Home Office, in this case, has been spared a full inquest because the coroner said that these were individual failings and not systemic. I mean, I spoke last night with the stepfather of the victim, and he said that this is urgently needed. They need this inquest.
Well, listen, Tony, we're going to very briefly, we've got about 10 seconds, Tony, on this one, very briefly, and then we'll have to
I don't think we should spare the Home Office. I think we should have an investigation. The Home Office should welcome an investigation because we need to do better, right? And the only way we're going to do better is we investigate thoroughly these types of events.
All right, Tony, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. That is Tony Smith. He's the former Director General of the UK Border Force.
Well, a Home Office spokesperson said, our deepest sympathies remain with the loved ones of Thomas Roberts. We will consider the findings of the coroner's report, but it would not be appropriate to comment further in the interim.
Wow, well, stay with us. Still to come, Germany is considering deporting migrants to the British-funded facilities of Rwanda. So will Labour too quick to ditch the scheme? We'll be debating that.
This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News, the People's Channel. Stay with us, because coming up to the break, we're having that debate.
What are your thoughts? Get in touch. gbnews.com/your say. The weather is next.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. There's a rain warning in force across southern areas. We could see some further localised flooding and travel disruption today. But further north, it's actually a very warm and sunny day. We've got an easterly wind, so that's bringing a bit more of a breeze to northeastern areas, but the northwest seeing the best of the summery weather, or what's left of the summer anyway, across parts of Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, northwestern England in particular is where we'll see the best of the sunshine, and temperatures climbing to the higher 20s for some areas in the far northwest. In the south, though, we've got this rain warning in force through much of the day, and it's going to be a much cooler day across many southern areas. Temperatures widely in the mid-teens, so quite an autumnal feeling day down here. And as I said, that rain could bring some further localised flooding and travel disruption into this evening. It's particularly as it moves further north into parts of South Wales this evening where we could see some surface water, so do take care if you're travelling in these areas. But elsewhere, it's going to be a fairly fine end to the day. There will be a bit more in the way of low cloud pulling in off the North Sea, though, across eastern coasts of Scotland, as well as northeastern England and the north coast of Scotland as well. But for many northern areas, it will remain largely dry overnight. A bit more in the way of that cloud dragging in further inland towards the Pennines and central areas of Scotland. And that band of rain will move northwards into the Midlands, parts of central areas of Wales, but it will tend to fizzle away. So there will be some respite from the rainfall for many areas overnight, but quite a lot of cloud around. And after a very warm day in the north and west, temperatures will hold up in the mid-teens for many areas up here by Saturday morning. So quite a bright and warm start to the day across northwestern areas. Once again, should be another fine day here through much of Saturday. But elsewhere across central areas, we'll see quite a lot of cloud around first thing and a risk of some quite heavy downpours into the afternoon. In the south as well, we could see further downpours by late afternoon as well. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is your chance.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. GB News royalty with your perfect start to the weekend. Lucky us. Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions that raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return. And a few surprises along the way. Might be cold in this studio. That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9 only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good morning. It's 11 a.m. on Friday the 6th of September, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Charlie Peters and Nana Acquia.
Small Boat Summit. The Home Secretary will chair a meeting with ministers and law enforcement today to discuss plans to tackle smuggling gangs.
Scampton scrapped. Labour ditches plans to house asylum seekers in RAF Scampton.
Is the Rwanda scheme being rehomed? Berlin is considering deporting migrants to British-funded facilities in Rwanda.
Prisons for hire. British prisoners could serve their sentences in Estonian jails under a plan being considered by ministers.
Britain's best brew. Which budget tea bag has been declared superior to the big name brands? We'll reveal that later.
So I'm thinking tea. Your favourite cup of tea. Where do you think was top of the tree for tea?
Top of the tree for tea.
See, you're
a poet and you didn't even know it.
Very good, Charlie.
Yeah, well, no coffee for you is what I heard this morning.
I don't drink coffee. I don't drink caffeine. I actually only drink herbal tea and also a reishi mushroom tea that one of my viewers sent me.
Oh, right.
Well, I've tried it at the moment.
Our viewers do not. They do not send me any teas just yet. Get much stranger things in my post here. But we'd love to hear what you think about tea. You can send your views and post your comments to us. You can also send us posts, it seems, by visiting gbnews.com/your say. But first, here's the news with the wonderful Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. It is just after 11 o'clock and the top story from the newsroom this morning. The Home Secretary is leading a summit today to address the escalating crisis of people smuggling across the English Channel. That meeting comes in response to a tragic incident this week where 12 lives were lost when a boat capsized, the deadliest crossing so far this year. Yvette Cooper will be joined by key cabinet ministers, intelligence officials and law enforcement agencies to target criminal smuggling networks. She says there is a moral imperative to act and wants to see tighter collaboration with European partners. Well, with over 21,000 arrivals so far this year, that summit will also focus on enhancing the new Border Security Command. Germany is considering using British-funded facilities in Rwanda to deport migrants entering European Union illegally. It comes as Berlin is facing mounting pressure to curb illegal migration following last month's ISIS-linked stabbing at a festival. German officials think the EU should repurpose the asylum facilities that Britain set up, which were recently scrapped by Sir Keir Starmer. Our political correspondent Olivia Utley has more.
There will be those who argue, and in fact Conservative MPs are already arguing, that if the Rwanda policy is good enough for Germany, if Germany believes it will act as a sufficient deterrent to stop illegal immigrants coming over to Germany, then why did Keir Starmer choose to throw out that policy on his first day in office and replace it with this rather nebulous plan to smash the gangs?
MPs and campaigners in Lincolnshire are celebrating the decision to scrap plans to house migrants at RAF Scampton. The government claims it fails to represent value for taxpayers' money. The former Lincolnshire airbase was estimated to have cost £200 million by 2027, 60 million of which has already been spent. The government will now close and sell that site, focusing instead on what it's calling faster asylum processing and border security improvements. Our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis is outside RAF Scampton.
The Labour government says despite £60 million being spent on the former RAF airbase, it is not value for money for the taxpayer, and between now and 2027, the £121 million that would have been spent can be better spent elsewhere.
News this morning that the UK prison population has hit a record high with 88,521 inmates now in jail, 171 more than last week's peak. The surge, driven by recent nationwide disorder, has seen the prison population rise now by over 1,000 in just the past month. In response, the government is considering renting jails in Estonia to ease overcrowding here. Meanwhile, a temporary early release scheme is set to begin on the 10th of September. Scotland is setting new boundaries to give women unobstructed access to abortion services. From the 24th of September, the Abortion Services Act will make it a criminal offence to interfere or to harass anyone accessing or providing abortion services within 200 metres of designated facilities. That law aims to safeguard women and staff from intimidation and distress. The UK is sending 650 missiles to Ukraine in a £160 million boost to its defences against Russia. John Healey, making his first appearance as Defence Secretary, will make that announcement at a summit in Germany later today. The missiles are part of a larger £3 billion aid package and will be delivered by the end of the year. In the US, officials there have arrested the father of a 14-year-old boy accused of a deadly school shooting. In that rare legal move, Colin Gray faces multiple charges, including involuntary manslaughter, for allegedly allowing his son to access the weapon that was used in the attack that sadly killed 4. Investigators have revealed both the 54-year-old and his son had previously been questioned over online threats about carrying out a school shooting. Well, the teenager Colt Gray used a semi-automatic rifle in the incident and will be tried as an adult. Southern England and South Wales are in for a wet end to the week as heavy rain brings the risk of travel disruption and flooding. The Met Office has issued a yellow weather warning in place until midnight tonight, following downpours that have already affected parts of Devon. Commuters are also being warned to prepare for challenging driving conditions and possible road closures. But sunnier skies further north, where temperatures could reach 27 degrees Celsius in parts of Scotland, potentially making it the warmest day of the year. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, I'll be back with you in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
It is coming up to 7 minutes after 11 o'clock. Hello and welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Charlie Peters and me, Nana Aguirre.
Now, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, is chairing a summit today to discuss how to tackle criminal gangs involved in smuggling people over the English Channel in small boats.
Labour has abandoned the Rwanda migration plan in favour of smashing the gangs, whatever that means. But the Prime Minister could live to regret that decision as it emerges that Germany are considering deporting migrants to the British-funded facilities in Rwanda.
Well, the GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley joins us from the National Crime Agency, where the summit will take place. And Olivia, what are we expected to hear later on today about this meeting?
Well, there's a very impressive cast of characters who Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer have gathered today. There are various ministers, obviously the Home Secretary herself, the Foreign Secretary, the Justice Secretary, members of the Crown Prosecution Service, Border Security, the NCA itself. But in terms of actually concrete policy announcements, well, to be honest, we're not really expecting to hear anything. As far as Yvette Cooper is concerned, this is all about sort of putting the wind in the sails of Labour's Smash the Gangs plan. It's about talking about the moral imperative of making sure that these gangs are stopped, but not really explaining precisely how that's going to be done. And that's pretty tricky for Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper, because talking is all very well, but the numbers are speaking for themselves. You've got 22,000 small boat migrants who've come here over the last year, including 8,000 since Labour took office in July. Yvette Cooper has talked about setting up a border security force, essentially more civil servants working to process illegal asylum seekers more quickly. But there isn't really yet in place any sort of deterrent to stop asylum seekers coming here. Now, the Rwanda policy, which was Rishi Sunak's brainwave idea, or Boris Johnson, I should say, brainwave idea to solve this, was abandoned immediately on Labour's first day in office. That plan, of course, would have involved deporting migrants who come to Britain illegally over to Rwanda for forever. That has been abandoned by Keir Starmer. And that's become a little bit more complicated for him over the last couple of days, because it's just emerged that Germany is considering using the facilities which British taxpayers have paid for in Rwanda to house migrants offshore while their claims are processed. It's slightly different what the Germans are planning to do with what the Brits were planning to do, because it's all about processing offshore rather than deportation. But it still is really a thorn in the side for the Prime Minister, and he'll receive a lot of criticism from Conservatives for that.
Olivia Utley, thank you very much. Well, that summit comes after the Home Office announced the government is scrapping plans to use RAF Scampton as housing for asylum seekers, and that's after £60 million was put into fixing up the site.
Well, joining us from RAF Scampton is the GB News East Midlands reporter, Will Hollis. Good morning, Will. And what's been the reaction to this closing down there and the announcement that there's going to be more migrants put into dispersal accommodation?
Yes, well, if 18 months ago we were to say that controversy around the announcement to house asylum seekers at RAF Scampton was an understatement, today it's an understatement to say that it is relief from the community here in West Lindsey District, from the local council, but also from the local people, whether they live close to Scampton or slightly further away, 15 minutes away in Lincoln. But I have been speaking today to the leader of West Lindsey District Council, Councillor Trevor Young, about his reaction to the news that asylum seekers will not be coming to the former airbase RAF Scampton.
We were worried, and we took some extremely difficult and brave decisions as a small district council. I think the previous government underestimated how hard we would fight to protect the site. We're absolutely delighted of the decision today, and we'll work with the Labour government to make sure that we deliver on this site.
Well, that's the Liberal Democrat leader of West Lindsey District Council saying that he welcomes working with the new Labour government. One of the people that has been here on the busy A15 outside the gates of Scampton for the last 18 months is Gary Lockwood. I believe you're actually one of, if not the first protester here. What do you feel like right now that it's been announced that asylum seekers won't be moving to the former airbase?
It's amazing news. It's the news we've been waiting for all this time. It's made the fight worth fighting. It's fantastic news, brilliant. And
why was it worth fighting? Why did you spend so many countless hours here on a very busy stretch of road for an airbase that is no longer even an airbase?
Because I just couldn't believe when I first heard about Scampton being used for the idea in the first place, so I thought, no, I can't have that. The most historic airbase in the whole world, famous for the dam busters and all them heroes that were here. Not a chance, so that's why I've been here for the last 18 months. It's been hard work, but it's well worth it.
You're from Lincoln, you live quite close, about 15 minutes away, but for the last 18 months you have pretty much lived here on this site. A lot of people have camped here. Yeah. What's that experience been like when at times there's been community tensions, there's been police investigations, and a lot of outsiders coming in and taking hold of the Scampton issue?
Well, it's not been easy at all. It's been hard work. There's been a lot of brilliant people here. There's been a few problems, but we got through it in the end, and it was well worth it.
The new Labour government says that this was not going to deliver value for money, despite £60 million being spent on the site, on porter cabins, on facilities. They said that it was going to cost more than it would be worth, but money has been spent on it. What do you want to see happen to Scampton now, and reflecting on that money that's already been spent?
Well, it needs, hopefully, Scampton Holdings, who were meant to be on here just before they came up with this plan.
For £300 million worth of regeneration.
Yeah, hopefully that can go ahead now. Hopefully the Labour saying they're going to sell it is not going to cause a problem with that, and it'll go ahead and create lots of jobs for the area, and it's just going to be fantastic if it goes ahead.
For anybody listening on the radio, you can hear the noise from the HGVs. Gary, just lastly, what's it been like experiencing the full force of Lincolnshire's honking horns blaring 24 hours a day as you protest here?
Oh, that's been amazing. That's not stopped since the start. As soon as I started sitting out here on my own, even with my little banner, there was people beeping, and it's been constant support all the way.
Gary Lockwood, one of the first protesters here at RAF Scampton, thank you for speaking to us today on GB News. The Labour government says it isn't value for money, but now the future of Scampton is still in the air, with hopefully, for some people, a heritage deal worth £300 million coming to the former Dam Buster base.
Will Hollis, thank you very much. Or maybe a prison. I don't know what's worse. Will Hollis, lovely to talk to you. Right, well, joining us to discuss this further is senior researcher at the Legatum Institute, Guy Dampier, and also human rights lawyer Shoaib Khan.
Right, Shoaib, I can start with you first. Germany now announcing that they could be taking on the British-funded facilities in Rwanda. You've previously been very critical of the deportation scheme. Do you think that the German plans are unworkable and immoral?
I do. I mean, firstly, I think they are, but obviously less unworkable and less immoral than the British plans were. Because, I mean, I was really quite, heartened just to see Olivia there actually explaining the distinction between the two plans, which so far everyone has missed. I don't think I've seen that anywhere, really. And there's a huge difference between saying, the few weeks, few days, few months it takes for us to process your asylum claim, we're sending you elsewhere, or like the Tories were doing, this is where you're going to live. And I mean, it was actually quite a ridiculous plan, obviously for so many reasons. But one was you're going to go there and have your asylum claim processed. But then obviously, if you get asylum, you stay in Rwanda forever. If you don't get asylum, you still remain in Rwanda forever. And in that, I mean, from that point of view, I didn't really understand why are even the claims being considered? Why does it matter what status someone gets? You know, basically what we're doing is putting people on a plane and you're going to Rwanda forever. So obviously, I mean, and it isn't just some technical distinction, it's a huge difference. But I still think, you know, as Germany, it's a huge country, huge economy. Surely there should be space, money, resources, infrastructure there to be able to process these few. And I think it's 8,000-10,000 people at the most that can be sent to Rwanda at one time. Surely there's space for them to be able to do that on their own land. I just don't see the point of sending them to Rwanda.
Yeah, but well, the point of sending people to Rwanda is that it is a deterrent. So you're trying to deter them from coming here, and via small boats, which, as you know, is dangerous and many people are dying, run by people smugglers in $1 billion or £1 billion industry. That's the point. We don't want them to go to Rwanda. We don't want them to take a boat. But in order to do it, we have to put something there in place. I just want to get Guy Dampier. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I think he's correct that there are some real subtleties to this case. It is for offshore processing, which is much more like the existing United Nations operation that is in Rwanda. It's not a permanent deportation. It's not a permanent removal. It's also only aimed at the 10,000 or so who are coming across the eastern borders from Russia and Belarus. It's not intended for the much larger numbers who are coming through the south of Germany. And I think that is the major problem for the Germans. They have an enormous refugee problem. It is costing the country an absolute fortune, and they are experiencing a sort of drip effect almost every day over this summer of gang rapes, attacks, and even terrorist attacks, as we saw recently. In fact, just yesterday, a young Bosnian origin man from Austria who made an attack near the Israeli consulate in Munich. So the problem for the Germans is it's all very well to say this sort of thing and sound tough, but it's not actually going to deter the people that they really want to deter.
Yeah, and Guy, on that point, I mean, are you seeing now Europe getting tough on these positions as Britain moves away from these deterrent effects? We saw Germany just last week deporting some 28 people back to Afghanistan without doing a deal with the Taliban. Is Europe toughening on this issue while Starmer is walking away from it?
I think that's definitely true. Europe is toughening. We've seen Sweden, which was famously pro-immigration, recently bragging about the fact that they've had the lowest number of asylum seekers since 1997 as a result of changes they've made. We can see that Italy is trying to do offshore processing in Albania. We can see that Cyprus is asking for certain areas of Syria to be declared as safe so they can send Syrian refugees there. There is definitely a trend on the continent. The question is whether it's going to be strong enough, because you can see with a lot of these plans, it's very difficult to deal with the numbers that they actually need to deal with. And the Rwanda plan, as intended by the Conservative government, had a genuine deterrent effect. We saw people going into Ireland because they didn't want to be sent to Rwanda. And I've spoken to people in contact with refugees who said that there was a very swift awareness among refugees of what this would mean, and they started looking at alternatives. I don't think that would be the case for Germany, and I think that will show in the German elections next year, where the CDU, the centre-right CDU, and the more right-wing AfD have both been doing extremely well, in no small part because Germany is fed up of this.
Well, sure, surely you would say that, I'm suggesting that you might say, that surely you don't want people to get on boats and do dangerous journeys. These are meant to be deterrents. What's wrong with trying to put something in place to deter people from doing something that is very, very dangerous and also perpetrated by people who are incredibly inhumane, like the smugglers?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, firstly, I don't think it is going to be deterrent, and that's the point we repeatedly made. In fact, just yesterday, just a few days ago, obviously, we saw yet another, tragic event, where is it 12 people who died trying to cross on a small boat. And then again, one of the survivors actually, interviewed on the media, just said, I don't care, I'm going to keep making this journey. So many times, I almost lost my life. I think it's whatever, the 6th, 8th, 10th time he tried to make the journey, and finally he got to Britain. So I don't think it is going to be a deterrent. Is the first thing. And secondly, if we talk about the German plan, then of course, I don't understand what the deterrent there is. Oh, okay, if you come here, if you come to Germany, unauthorized, we'll send you to Rwanda for a few weeks and then you'll be brought back. I just don't understand how possibly that is a deterrent to anyone, unless we're saying, Rwanda is so awful that even the thought of being in an asylum processing center over there for a few weeks is going to deter people. I don't think it will. So I don't see what the deterrent is. But also, I think what it comes down to at the end of the day is we have to start taking responsibility. Again, I know, why does everyone want to come to Britain? Why does everyone want to come to Europe? They
benefits.
don't. We
benefits.
take on very small numbers considering who we are.
It's the benefits. I'm just to answer your question, Shahab. You said, why do people want to come here? It's the benefits. And even a lot of the European countries are saying, look, we are way too generous in this country. That's why they're all coming here, risking their lives. What are you suggesting, then, as an alternative? Because we hear a lot of opposition from people, lawyers and so on and so forth, with no other alternative. What would be your ultimate alternative?
So firstly, to say the point, just completing the point I was making, that we take on very small numbers considering the number of refugees around the world. Very few people come to Europe, actually, a very small proportion. Turkey, Pakistan, so many other countries, they are huge recipients of asylum seekers. That's where the majority of the world's refugees are. So very small numbers come to Europe anyway. Secondly, in terms of alternatives, it's clear we were saying there for decades, safe legal routes. The point is, obviously, countries around Europe hosted hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians, for instance. Why did Ukrainians not have to risk their lives? Because we actually sent planes. We brought them, we treated them like people, like humans, and actually sent planes, like we did, sadly, very few, not enough in Afghanistan, just 2 years ago.
Shoaib, we're running out of time. Shoaib, we are running out of time. Shoaib, we're running out of time.
Yeah, just quickly, Guy, you've heard Shoaib there mentioning the pull factor of Britain. The Interior Minister of France said that that's part of the problem. Do you agree with him?
Definitely. I think there's a reason why people come here when there are refugee camps and safety relatively closer. It's because they've got a dream of the West and, in many senses, they've got a higher than 50% chance that they are going to get here and they will be looked after for life and have a more comfortable existence.
Well, and we do have the highest acceptance rate out of all of the countries, but that could be another pull. Shoaib Khan, thank you so much, and Guy Dampier, thank you to you as well.
Well, with some breaking news for you now, because a suspended Labour councillor has denied encouraging violent disorder in connection with comments at an anti-fascist protests. Earlier last month, videos emerged online reportedly showing Labour councillor Ricky Jones telling a crowd in East London that far-right demonstrators needed to have their throats cut. The Dartford councillor was arrested by the Metropolitan Police and charged, but today Mr Jones has pleaded not guilty and been remanded in prison awaiting a bail hearing.
Right, up next, Pope Francis has sparked controversy, but why? This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and he did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Luke Douglas Hugh is a plogger. It's the act of jogging and picking up litter at the same time.
Ah, I thought it had something to do with cycling, but I was thinking of recycling. You better explain what the term is.
Plogging originates really as an expression from Sweden, from someone called Erik Alström, who combined the two words of plocka uppa in Swedish and jogging, so plogging.
And what does plog uppa mean?
Picking up.
Oh, I see.
Oh, I see.
All right.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Do you take a bag with you or something and you pick up rubbish? There you go.
Absolutely, yeah.
In terms of being a jogger, how do you combine the two? Because joggers wouldn't want
to keep up the pace,
yeah, they wouldn't want to
you?
keep stopping to pick stuff up, would they?
I'm the coastline runner. I run the coast collecting plastic pollution.
Which
mainly.
coast?
Well, I've done the whole of the East Coast, from Lowestoft to Leith.
Wow.
And then cut across from Edinburgh to Glasgow on the Grand Union Canal.
Yeah.
A few years ago, someone said, Luke, don't get all grand and stuff. You're not the coastline runner, you're just a plogger. And I thought, hang on a minute, what's that? And I looked into it, and I realised that that's what I was doing.
Do you do it entirely on your own, or do you do it in groups?
I do it. I originally started on my own. I got clapped off by a mayor in Great Yarmouth, but now more and more people join me, and I.
What I find interesting is that, I mean, jogging, you could say, is just something you do for yourself, for your body, but what you're doing is something extra. I mean, you're making a difference. Do you think you make much of a difference?
No. To be honest, I don't. I think I'm making a difference in raising awareness of not polluting our beaches so much.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets and My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 11:25. This is Britain's Newsroom with Charlie Peters and Nana Aquir.
We're joined now by former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire and broadcaster and journalist Claire Muldoon. They're joining us for the papers. Should we start with this one on Pope Francis? He has reignited his long-running quarrel with childless pet owners after he praised couples with 5 children and criticised those who prefer cats and dogs.
Well, he didn't really. This is completely out of context.
So,
I mean, I am no Pope Francis fan. I am a very devout Catholic, and I do have 4 children, just in case none of you actually knew that small fact before. It was all in the preposition instead of. Now, the Pope is on a tour of Oceania and Indonesia at the moment, and he made the remarks at a conference pre-Mass or post-Mass yesterday, when after the conference they actually went to a priest who actually looks invariably like Jesus Christ himself, which was quite funny. Anyway, so...
Well, that's if you believe he looked like the Caucasian guy on the cross when they were in the middle of Jerusalem.
This one wasn't Caucasian.
He wasn't Caucasian?
No, he wasn't.
A Caucasian.
He really looked like the real...
Usually they're like blonde hair, blue eyes. You're like, hold on a minute.
The real McCoy? The real McCoy. So what he said was, parents, right, if you are parents, I think I've got Charlie Rowley's seat now. Parents should have children, if they can, they should have children instead of pets. And pets are invariably expensive to have. And they don't have the same, parents don't have the same autonomy with children as they do with animals. So I would say, yes, I agree with him in this. He's not saying don't have pets. He's not referring to J.D. Vance's atrocious childless cat and women comments. But take it.
No, I say that, but I have been a little bit disturbed, Scarlett, by the number of pet parents I've seen out and about in London these days. You see people with prams with cats and dogs in them. Is there not a substitution?
They send their pets to psychologists because they're worried about it. They're worried about separation.
Special diets.
And in the meantime, you know, there are people who have dogs who are just kept at home. Left at home for sort of hours and hours and hours. So I completely agree. But I think, you know, to have people saying you should have children is wrong.
No, you do what you like in life when it comes to that sort of thing. Now, let's move on to this story in the US. The father of a 14-year-old boy accused of killing 4 people at a high school in the US state of Georgia has been arrested.
Okay, so this is an amazing story. This young man went to school on his second day and killed 4 people. He went with a gun. And what one discovers is that previously, I mean, you know, months earlier, probably last year, the FBI had gone to them and said, look, you know, on this website, your son is saying, you know, that he wants to kill people and school shooters. And the son went, no, I've been hacked. This really isn't me. And the FBI, they investigated and couldn't do anything because they absolutely denied it. So what did the father do? He went out and bought a gun, I mean, you know, an assault rifle for a Christmas present for his 14-year-old boy. And then, surprise, surprise, you know, somebody who is clearly got real problems, kills 4 people. And so the father is being done for second-degree murder.
And he's being tried as an adult, isn't he, the son called?
Yeah, and the second-degree murder charge is pivotal here because second-degree murder charges in America means you're being tried for murder but also child abuse, and the child abuse being, which I think actually shows it's quite insightful for Americans at this point, actually, for the father to buy a gun for this 14-year-old.
Well, absolutely. And we did speak to a lawyer, and the death penalty is an option, potentially. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, especially after what he's done.
What, the death penalty?
For the father, absolutely.
Oh, Nana, no, you can't possibly.
Why not?
Because it's against all human
No, but
nature,
it's available in Georgia, so you might say that, and that might be your view, but in America, in that particular state, it is an option. And I'm glad that that's an option, because people people like that, and depending on what they come up with, I think that should be an option
but
for people like that.
I think it is a warning to say, you know, actually, what on earth was happening here that you're buying your children guns?
Well,
and
that's
then
illegal. But they do that in America. I mean, you can do that in America.
And every time people go, yeah, but shouldn't we do something about the law? They go, oh no, you know, this is terrible. I mean, you know, what we need is more guns, and then we can shoot the
people with the guns. Yeah, no, that's what's often happening in the States. I did actually ask the lawyer, why don't people talk about the gun laws in the States? And for some reason or other, they don't. But there is no other use than mass massacre for an assault rifle. So why should anyone
be banned?
Be allowed to ban
There's no use for a gun other than to kill someone. But that is evil and that's wrong.
But those who would defend the Second Amendment in the United States point to a fear of government overreach, which is something now I think you're concerned about. Would you not fear the possibility that one day the state could take significant control over you? Other people defending gun rights in the States point to... I'll just finish the point. Other people... I will finish this point whether you like it or not. I'm going to give you two. I'm going to give you two.
Do you mean
on the second
with
point,
regard to actually carrying guns?
Yes, carrying guns. And often defenders of gun rights in the States, no, I'm not one of them, they will say that in places where the highest concentration of firearms are available, you actually have the lowest number of gun deaths. They point to cities where there is significant restriction on ownership, where there is more gun death. The problem here, they say, is not the weapon but the means. We have the same discussion all the time about knives in Britain. We talk about clamping down on knives. Is that really the problem in Britain with knife crime? You know, I'm not so sure it is.
I think it's the punishment. There's not enough punishment. So when you get caught with that knife, very little happens to you. If there was a potential for the death penalty or something like that, I think a lot of people...
But
also the number of
we have to go.
Accidental deaths from guns is appalling. I mean, children get hold of them. It is frightening, Charlie.
Scarlett Maguire, thank you. Claire Muldoon, thank you. Right, it's time to get your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good morning to you. Just after 11 o'clock, half past 11 rather. And we'll just start with a breaking line from Lewis Crown Court this morning that a people smuggler who left a group of migrants banging and screaming for help concealed in a small space inside a refrigerated van has been jailed this morning for 10 years. Anas Al-Mustafa has been sentenced for smuggling 7 people from France to the UK, as I say, hiding them in a cramped and fake vehicle compartment. Crew members on a ferry carrying that vehicle used an axe to free the migrants after hearing their pleas for help. One of those victims, who suffered a stroke, has since developed a long-term memory issue as a result of the conditions they were placed in. The Home Secretary is leading a summit today to address the escalating crisis of people smuggling across the Channel. The meeting comes in response to a tragic incident this week where 12 lost their lives when a boat capsized, the deadliest crossing this year so far. Yvette Cooper will be joined by key cabinet ministers, intelligence officials and law enforcement agencies to target criminal smuggling networks. She says there's a moral imperative to act and wants to see tighter collaboration with European partners. Well, with over 21,000 arrivals so far this year, the summit will also focus on enhancing the new Border Security Command. Germany is considering using British-funded facilities in Rwanda to deport migrants entering the European Union. It comes as Berlin faces mounting pressure to curb illegal migration following last month's ISIS-linked stabbing at a festival. German officials think the EU should repurpose the asylum facilities that Britain set up, which were recently scrapped by Sir Keir Starmer. The UK prison population has hit a record high with 88,521 inmates as of this morning. That's 171 more than the past week. The surge, driven by recent nationwide disorder, has seen the population of prisons rise now by over 1,000 in just the past month. In response, the government says it's considering renting jail cells in Estonia to ease overcrowding. Meanwhile, a temporary early release scheme is set to begin later this month. And the UK is sending 650 missiles to Ukraine in a £160 million boost to its defence against Russia. John Healey, making his first appearance as Defence Secretary overseas, will make that announcement at a summit in Germany today. The missiles are part of a larger £3 billion aid package and will be delivered by the end of the year. Those are the latest headlines for now. A full roundup at 12 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Well, up at noon, Good Afternoon Britain with Tom Harwood. Tom, what's coming up on your show today?
Well, I'm all alone today. We've managed to time our holidays pretty poorly this week, me and Emily. So Emily is sunning herself somewhere much, much more sunny than the United Kingdom. But I've got a big show coming up nevertheless. We're going to be speaking to some senior politicians. Dan Jarvis, the Security Minister, will be on the show. I will be quizzing him over the deaths in the Channel this week. Did the government throw away the Rwanda deterrent all too soon? It seems that, if anything, the numbers coming across the English Channel have been rising. 8,000 since the Labour Party came into office. That's not what they promised in the general election campaign.
Although they would argue that actually it was summer, it was hot, the sea was calmer, which is why more people come. And don't they normally more people come in August?
Well, that is absolutely true. We have, however, seen more people now come this year than the same point last year. And it does raise the question, are our politicians simply that impotent that they are just going to say, well, it's the weather, there's nothing we can do? Well, if they gave away the deterrent and they've been trying to go after these criminal gangs, we've got a press conference, of course, or a meeting with the Home Secretary and senior leaders today about all of this, but it doesn't seem that what they're trying to do has been working. They've been in office for more than 2 months now.
This interview with Dan Jarvis, really looking forward to it, and I think so will our viewers. A lot of comments on your say talking about these proposed plans for the border security command. I want to bring up one quickly for you now. Alan asked, shall we ask Turkey to stop the small boats, that smuggling route? Without them, they'd be beached. And that's a big concern, isn't it, for the Security Minister and those agencies you've just been mentioning? Can they be more than just a domestic force? Can they be international to disrupt this billion-dollar industry?
And yet, for years, the British government, both the previous government and this government, have been working with groups in Turkey, the Turkish authorities and other countries around. Mark White had a report only a few months ago about the seizure of boats in Turkey. One of the problems, though, and some reports suggest this today, is that some of the more sturdy boats have been seized, meaning that actually it's more rickety boats that migrants are now coming across in, meaning we have had more deaths this week than previously has been the case. So is it actually the policy of smashing the gangs without a deterrent that potentially has caused more deaths in the Channel? Because the migrants still want to come, it's just they have less seaworthy vessels in which to do so.
Well, listen, Tom, it will be lovely to hear your thoughts. His show is coming up next. He's not all by himself, though, because he's got his brand new teeth with him as well. Stay with us, that's coming up at midday. Still to come, which tea brand has been declared the best brew?
This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News. See you soon after the break.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. There's a rain warning in force across southern areas. We could see some further localised flooding and travel disruption today. But further north, it's actually a very warm and sunny day. We've got an easterly wind, so that's bringing a bit more of a breeze to northeastern areas, but the northwest seeing the best of the summery weather, or what's left of the summer anyway, across parts of Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, northwestern England in particular is where we'll see the best of the sunshine and temperatures climbing to the higher 20s for some areas in the far northwest. In the south, though, we've got this rain warning in force through much of the day, and it's going to be a much cooler day across many southern areas. Temperatures widely in the mid-teens, so quite an autumnal feeling day down here. And as I said, that rain could bring some further localised flooding and travel disruption into this evening. It's particularly as it moves further north into parts of South Wales this evening where we could see some surface water, so do take care if you're travelling in these areas. But elsewhere, it's going to be a fairly fine end to the day. There will be a bit more in the way of low cloud pulling in off the North Sea, though, across eastern coasts of Scotland, as well as northeastern England and the north coast of Scotland as well. But for many northern areas, it will remain largely dry overnight. A bit more in the way of that cloud dragging in further inland towards the Pennines and central areas of Scotland. And that band of rain will move northwards into the Midlands, parts of central areas of Wales, but it will tend to fizzle away. So there will be some respite from the rainfall for many areas areas overnight. But quite a lot of cloud around, and after a very warm day in the north and west, temperatures will hold up in the mid-teens for many areas up here by Saturday morning. So quite a bright and warm start to the day across northwestern areas. Once again, should be another fine day here through much of Saturday. But elsewhere across central areas, we'll see quite a lot of cloud around first thing and a risk of some quite heavy downpours into the afternoon. In the south as well, we could see further downpours by late afternoon as well. Bye-bye.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, he didn't say that, Dave. I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
It's coming up to 42 minutes after 11 o'clock. Good morning. This is Britain's Newsroom with Charlie Peters and me, Nana Akweer.
Well, we love to hear what you have to think about the stories we've been covering today. Keep sending in your views and post your comments on gbnews.com/yoursay. I just want to read out a couple that we've got in the last hour. Lady Westminster says, stop blaming other countries like Turkey. This is on the small boats issue. The problem is the lack of a UK border force and repetitive UK governments failing to deal with this issue.
I'm with her. Yeah. I'm with her. I'm sick and tired of hearing the thing about Turkey. If we didn't make the place so appetising and invite literally our percentage of people who actually get sent back is virtually practically near zero, that's why people come here, because they know their chances of staying here are much higher. We are actively, without meaning to, in a sense, encouraging people to take that journey. Ian says, on Starmer's recent trip to Germany, did he secretly hand over the keys to the Rwanda complex? Because it does feel a little bit like that. Literally, you've given off this wonderful... I thought it was a brilliant idea. Cynthia said, Charlie and Nana, great.
Oh, that's very sweet, isn't it? On our first time. And finally, S. Atkinson, no forename there, very secretive. Even the US deport foreign criminals who are tracked down, arrested and charged with deportation papers, then sent to holding units. We are the softest touch in the world. Well, I don't know about that, but we certainly are facing a bit of trouble on that point for sure. Well, moving on, Nana, do you want to get this one?
Why not? The competition watchdog CMA has launched an investigation into Ticketmaster over the Oasis concert sales.
Now, this comes as fans were met with price hikes when trying to secure tickets for the band's comeback. So do we need regulations to be better on this issue? Well, we're joined now by Stephen Davis, a senior fellow at the Institute for Economic Affairs. Stephen, what's this all about then? People trying to regulate the sale of tickets. Is it the right move, or do we need to let the free market continue for concert tickets?
Well, it's an unnecessary move. There are regulations already in place which say, for example, that if you're going to offer tickets for sale and use dynamic pricing, you have to make the consumers aware that this might happen. And so what the investigation actually is into is whether or not Ticketmaster did that. What I suspect is that they did, in fact, do that, but people did not realise either that it was happening or that it would happen so quickly, because I think people are familiar with the way that if you book an airline ticket ahead of time, it's going to be cheaper, which is how dynamic pricing works in that industry. What they didn't expect, I imagine, is that the price could actually change in real time while they were waiting to buy a ticket and buy, a couple of £100. Now, that can happen with things like airlines or hotel rooms. In this case, it happened because the demand for the tickets were so high that the technology simply couldn't cope with it. And it triggered the dynamic pricing software to raise the price, not in order to generate more profit. It does do that, but that's not the point of it, but in order to reduce the number of people trying to buy a ticket at a given time, so that the technology, the online booking service, could actually cope with the level of demand. So that's what's happened. And I don't think you need government regulation really to deal with this. We already have regulations in place.
But it worked, didn't it? The plan is it's supply and demand. It's like a house. You're buying a house. If loads of people want it, you can argue. Do you think perhaps what there needs to be is a cap as to how high that price can get, or no?
No, there shouldn't be a cap. I mean, the point about... Well, it's a question of how you want to allocate the tickets. The fundamental reality is that there are way more people wanting to buy tickets for certain events than there actually are places available. And so the question is, how do you then share out those tickets? How do you decide who gets the tickets? Now, if you go purely with free markets and the price mechanism, then what will happen is that the price will simply rise until it reaches a level at which the number of people who can afford to buy a ticket at that price is the same as the number of tickets. Now, you might not want to do that. You might want to have a limit on the price, but the flip side of that is, if you do that, a lot of people will be disappointed and won't get a ticket. Now, you've just got to accept that as the price you pay.
Well, Stephen Davis, thank you very much. He's a senior fellow at the Institute for Economic Affairs. Yeah, I don't think these... Look, I can't see... There shouldn't be a cap at all. And I used to work years and years ago. First ever job in TV was for Bid Up and Price Drop TV. It was about 30 years ago. And you had like about 1,000 of something. And basically everyone paid either the lowest or the highest price. I did the rising price auctions. So you basically, when 1,000 people came in, whatever price that reached, everyone paid that price.
Bang, done.
And the same with the falling, when everyone... So there's always a level of dynamism with pricing, and it's about supply and demand.
That's what people expect, and I'm sure quite a few people will be watching this topic at home, thinking about what we've been discussing on the programme so far. Why is the government focusing on Oasis when all of these crises are facing the country? I'm sure plenty will be thinking that at home. But up next, we will be revealing the best British tea. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. See you soon.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Michael found the recipe for success without going to university. Instead, he went looking for answers inside of a kitchen. The 22-year-old has just finished a Level 2 course in professional cookery at UCB, a college in Birmingham.
When I started UCB, I was expecting to be so intense from day one, but it's not. It sort of builds up, so to the point where you get comfortable. And building that comfort is a huge part of becoming a chef, because you need to be comfortable being in your own skin.
This week, tens of thousands of students get their A-level results. The college wants them to remember university isn't the only option after school, and West Midlands Mayor Richard Parker agrees.
University is the right route for lots of our young people, but there are other pathways to getting access to qualifications that will give young people the skills they need to succeed in life.
Further education principal Rosa Wells says apprenticeships and technical courses are also great routes to a career.
Here at University College Birmingham, we offer vocational courses. These are hands-on technical courses that can give people a different opportunity, something different to school. So we've got brilliant facilities that really give students industry standard training.
A skills shortage across the UK means youngsters learning trades are desperately needed. 36% of job vacancies are due to shortages. The Labour government's new body, Skills England, has been created to bring training providers and businesses together with local and national authorities plus unions to target trade gaps and regional requirements. Michael's now finishing his qualification. Where he goes next is down to him.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody
in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Now, which budget tea bag has been declared superior to the big name brands? Well, we can now reveal that Britain's best tasting brew is Asda, and that's according to customer group Which.
So, yes, Asda has been beaten. It's beaten big-name brands such as PG Tips, Tetley and Twinings in a taste test to find Britain's best cuppa. Chief Executive of the UK Tea and Infusions Association, Dr Sharon Hall, joins us now. Asda, what a surprise. Listen, I shop in Asda, though, I'll tell you that now. But I love all the Asda bargain stuff, but Asda, it's a bit of a surprise for many.
It's not that much of a surprise, actually. I've had a look at the data, and the sample size was really quite small, 79 people. Yeah, and actually there were only a couple of percent that separated the brands that they mentioned. So all of the brands scored between 70 and 72%. So they all came out pretty similar, and I'm not surprised at that because we're all very brand loyal. We like the tea that we like, and we like that very specific taste. And all of those brands do have a unique taste depending on what's in that blend and where that tea comes from.
Well, I can see, Sharon, you're very difficult to surprise. No, seriously. But look, most people would expect it to be Tetley or one of the big brands. You know what I mean?
Sure. I mean, I'm totally on board with what Sharon said about brand loyalty with tea. I can remember going on holiday in the past and stuffing half my suitcase with tea bags. Yeah, future brews, because I just don't trust what I'm going to get when I get out there, particularly in the United States. I mean, goodness me, some of the stuff that they can sell you there in tea is not so ideal. But Asda coming up top, I think that will surprise some people, even if it is a small sample, Sharon.
Yeah, I think so. But as I say, it was a percent difference. So I think it's really about, as I say, what's in that blend, what people really like. If you like something a little bit stronger, you probably like a blend that has tea from Assam in it. And probably what most people don't know is the majority of tea that we drink in this country actually comes from Kenya. So Kenyan tea will be the big base of most of the breakfast teas that we drink.
So I wanted to see, maybe you can debunk this myth as well. Everyone keeps saying that there's more caffeine in tea than there is in a cup of coffee. So briefly, Sharon, is this true? No, I knew it wasn't true.
There's about 42 mgs of caffeine in an average cup of tea and about double that in the amount of coffee. And the thing about tea is it's got a specific amino acid called L-theanine, and L-theanine actually smooths out the effects of the caffeine. So you get that sort of smoother effect. So tea can wake you up. Lots of people like to drink a cup of tea first thing, get them going, kickstart the day. But the L-theanine kind of moderates the jitters that you can sometimes get if you have too much caffeine.
Thank you, Sharon. Sharon Hall, she's the Chief Executive of the UK Tea and Infusions Association. Thank you very much, Dr. Sharon Hall, by the way, don't you know? Right, well, listen, lots of you being in touch with your thoughts. They love you, Charlie. They love you.
That's very
they do. I could only find another one saying you're doing a good job.
Well, you've been a dream co-host for my
Charlie and Nana,
so
great. Love Nana. Lots of you with your thoughts. Let's see. Let's read this one here. Maybe why says this. Maybe those jailed or awaiting sentences for tweets should be pleading not guilty, and also because that would then take ages, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's the trials being set for all of these cases pushed into 2025. I saw one trial set most recently for a case in 2027. Huge backlog problem there. Last thing you want to do is being remanded in custody for that.
Was just saying, says brilliant show, Nana and Charlie. I sincerely hope you team up again very soon. Thank you. That's lovely. Well, that's it from us in Britain's Newsroom.
And up next, it's Good Afternoon Britain with Tom Harwood. We'll see you again tomorrow. Well, you might see somebody else.
I'll see you tomorrow at 3 o'clock.
I won't be there, but Nana will be there again.
With deaths in the channel this week, we're asking, did the government ditch the Rwanda deterrent too soon? Now Germany's looking at it. That, and we've heard sending criminals to Australia. Well, how about Estonia? All that to come.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update brought to you from the Met Office. There's a rain warning in force across southern areas. We could see some further localised flooding and travel disruption today. But further north, it's actually a very warm and sunny day. We've got an easterly wind that's bringing a bit more of a breeze to northeastern areas, but the northwest seeing the best of the summery weather, or what's left of the summer anyway, across parts of Northern Ireland, Western Scotland, northwestern England in particular is where we'll see the best of the sunshine, and temperatures climbing to the higher 20s for some areas in the far northwest. In the south, though, we've got this rain warning in force through much of the day, and it's going to be a much cooler day across many southern areas. Temperatures widely in the mid-teens, so quite an autumnal feeling day down here. And as I said, that rain could bring some further localised flooding and travel disruption into this evening. It's particularly as it moves further north into parts of South Wales this evening where we could see some surface water, so do take care if you're travelling in these areas. But elsewhere, it's going to be a fairly fine end to the day. There will be a bit more in the way of low cloud pulling in off the North Sea, though, across eastern coasts of Scotland, as well as northeastern England and the north coast of Scotland as well.